The FNRad Snowboard podcast is presented by Vans. Season 8 of FNRad is sponsored by Wired Snowboards, Anon Optics, the Boardroom Snowboard Shop, FindAnEpicAgent.com, and Tribute Board Shop in Nelson, BC. The Boardroom Snowboard Shop is Vancouver's premier snowboard shop. They've been in operation for over 30 years and aim to provide their customers with the right product at the right price with the best service. The BR logo is synonymous with the West Coast Canadian lifestyle and from day one has helped to progress and promote the activities that Boardroom employees live every day. They pride themselves on learning about and using the products they sell and passing on their product knowledge to you in order to provide you the best possible product for your personal performance needs. The Boardroom offers a price match guarantee and free shipping on orders over $100. Check out the Boardroom Snowboard Shop in Vancouver, North Vancouver, or check out boardroomshop.com and use FNRad 5 at checkout to save yourself some cash. Support also comes from Dakine, Grouse Mountain, Mount Seymour, Pro Standard GoPro accessories, and Volcom outerwear. Please subscribe to, like, and share our YouTube channel. Special thanks this episode to Beneath Apparel, Mervyn Manufacturing, makers of Libtech and GNU snowboards and bent metal binders, Sunshine Village, The Source, Kaya J and the Drink Ticket's new album Better, and Tomahawk Indigenous Products. Krush Kulesza is a snowboard event creator and director of Snowboy Productions, who are the people behind Holy Bowly, Duh, and Its Tits, among other iconic snowboard community gatherings. Krush's slogan, "Making shit radder than it was yesterday," since 1997, refers to Snowboy's history of bringing together the world's greatest snowboarders at a bunch of different resorts, along with media, industry, and locals, a feat no other group is attempting on this scale. If you've seen pictures of Snowboy events, then you want to attend, and if you've been to an event, you want to go back. You're going to love this conversation with this legendary, literal and figurative gatekeeper for the snowboard industry's ability to enjoy itself, Krush Kulesza.
I went to the Off concert with Tony Monday.
Oh, no way.
With Jeannie and Tony. Yeah,
that's great,
like,
man.
Just, it's what's rad on that. It's like he picked me up at the ferry terminal and we're just cruising up in their minivan. And of course, at some point, there's a Craig story just pops up. It was such a part of like, they grew up together and shit. It's just, I just geek out on that stuff. So like we're having all this conversation and all of a sudden there's a Craig story and I just like, I just start listening, like keep talking. So
yeah, I love Tony. Tony's going to be on the show at some point for sure.
Yeah.
He's a big part of
such an underappreciated soul that had like, and the most humble dude and I'm like, I've been trying to like egg him into doing like a gallery type of piece. You know, he dives in every once in a while. He would go in different phases. For a while, he was scanning a lot of stuff and putting it up. And I'm just like, whenever you want to do your gallery, I'm like, I will do all of the bullshit for you.
Rad.
Like just as a favor to snowboarding and to myself. So I'm like, I just want like the little bits that, because I wasn't a part of that scene at that time, but I knew it was there.
Yeah.
And so now the fact that these are people that I have the luxury of calling friends and whatnot, it's like, it feels to me that like if it wasn't just distance that was separated, like we would have been hanging out type of thing. And so I'm like, we're just long lost souls on that stuff. So I'm like, dude, that would be like the highest honor would be just to do little things like that. Where like, that's a piece of cake for me. It'd be a pain in the ass for somebody else maybe. Right. But I'm like, I just want people to see your shit because like you were there and documenting closer than anybody who I held at the highest, still hold at the highest. I mean, my 93 Craig Kelly is hanging on the wall in my office to this day. It's like, that's rad. And I, you know, especially if like there's a connection where someone you never got to meet which is kind of cool because it stays James Dean, right?
Totally.
Died young, that type of thing. So forever not aging, not fucking up, not getting fat, making bad decisions.
Right.
It's like it's just timeless. And like so anyway.
He's the man. And I absolutely love Tony Welch.
Yeah.
He came out of the woodwork at Baker and took a few photos of me, and I was genuinely like, I'm in a Tony Welch photo? That's fucking insane.
Yeah.
And he was like, "Oh, come on." And I'm like, No,
he almost
on,
like gets
man.
mad at you.
Yeah. He's such a dude, man.
And he looks like Sammy Hagar when he's in Montrose with that amazing hair. So I'm just like, fuck, that's so awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, that
big Tony fan.
That whole Pacific Northwest thing, like there's so much that has happened in that. You know, I don't even know what qualifies as the Pacific Northwest. Like, how far down does it go? Is it still like Mount Hood? Is that still Pacific Northwest?
I would call that. You have to, in my opinion, like, so I grew up in the inland Northwest. So that's like around Spokane, Red Mountain, BC, stuff like that.
Right.
That's interior to me. So I'm like,
yes.
To me, Pacific you have to be like within like the ocean. It has to have the Pacific in it.
Got it.
So to me, it's proximity to the ocean.
Yeah.
So to me, it's like, it's the coastals, it's the Cascades. So I would consider, Hood still, and Mount Hood. I guess other people's opinions would be like, if you're going down the Oregon Cascades, like I don't necessarily consider Mount Bachelor maybe.
That kind of seems like that's
it's a gray
the
area
divider,
to me.
Right,
but
right.
if you fucking grew up in Bend, you're claiming that for sure.
Right,
so,
right.
You got homies that live in Boise and they're claiming like it's whatever it is. But like me personally,
yeah, Boise's kind of.
If you can smell salt
interior.
in the air,
right.
Like
right.
if you can go outside and you can feel that the Pacific is there. Because it's not the Northwest.
Well, at some point, it turns into the Sierras, right? Like, what is that divide, or what do we call that? Like, Northern California, like the Tahoe area? That's definitely not Pacific Northwest.
Right, yeah. To me, it's like the aridness, too, because like, it's like you got the Oregon Cascades. It's not a range. It's just volcanoes. So they're amazing, grand, beautiful things.
Yeah.
But they just, there's one there, and then there's another one.
Yes.
But like once they hit Washington and like from Mount Rainier, especially Mount Rainier north, it's just like it's a range.
It's insane.
And it bumps into BC, and it just gets gnarlier all the way up to Alaska.
3 ranges that like bump into each
right,
other, right?
Yeah.
The Selkirks, Purcells, and the Monashis.
And they're all just getting bigger, getting shoved up.
It's nuts. Yeah.
As we go.
I'm starting to get used
mountains.
to traveling to other places and flying into Salt Lake City. You see that ridge line just all of a sudden pop up from the lake.
Yeah.
And you realize how great of a zone that is. Like, of course, there's all those amazing mountains right there.
Right.
It just is like this geographical, like, beautiful spot.
Yeah.
And then the same with California, like Tahoe.
Oh yeah.
You're in the arid desert in Reno and you're driving through these kind of rolling hills, and then all of a sudden it's just like paradise.
Well, that's how I picture like when you're flying back from Japan or something like that, where it's like the Pacific Ocean's fucking huge, right?
Right.
And it's like, and you're going for thousands and thousands and thousands of miles, and then all of a sudden, it's not like you again go across the plains.
Yeah.
It's like as soon as you hit the West Coast, it just fucking shelves.
Yeah.
And like, just from not even snowboarding related, that's just like if you're just designing something on Minecraft or something, if you're building some rad zone, like fuck, that's how you would do it, right? Just desolate fucking blue water, and then just and then and like the fact that that's where the youngest mountains are, like that's where the tectonic plates are going, and like that's currently getting bigger, and as you move across the North America, that's progressively older, and like thinking about that the Appalachians and shit on the East Coast were probably the size of the Cascades at one point,
right,
and they just got weathered down over a million. Like that shit,
I
just
love that.
Puts
stuff.
you in perspective. You're like
that is
wow.
the part of snowboarding that to me is immutable.
Yeah.
Is that you're in this beautiful spot and you're riding the terrain from this creative point of view, but you're also like discovering what it is to be out and traveling. Like when we went to Montana, someone just casually mentioned that. Like, I didn't realize it until we're like 4 days in. Like, it's all blue runs. They're all just like because the mountains aren't like this. They're like this.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, that could be, I might want to retire there. Like, it's
Right.
just all amazing, groomed, cold, amazing shit.
Right.
And then when the snow falls, you don't want it to be too much more than, 12 inches,
Right.
17 inches, because you'll start to get bogged down. It's
Yeah.
just not steep enough.
But when you were young and hungry growing up
yeah.
in the coastals or
Yes.
the interior,
Yeah.
you just don't even realize what you have. Like, again, it's like when you're talking about that the ocean and then stuff coming up, it's like, it's the only place where the snow, like you look up in Alaska, it's the only place in the world where snow sticks on like 45 degree
Yes.
slopes, just
Yeah.
because there's all this moisture. It has to go somewhere, so it sticks. And like, so I would be like hanging out at Red Mountain and stuff, and I'd meet some friends in Colorado, and I'd go there in the spring, and I'd be like, oh wow, I'm going up to these, I'd always just heard about Colorado and shit.
Totally.
And I'd always be so disappointed, like, just because for the type of riding that I was into,
Yeah.
just like all mountain riding and just the gnarliness of mountains,
Yeah.
was like, you were in the spot. And so it was like, but then it was like to your point, as place and time, right? Where it's like, you don't, as you age or your things change or whatever, perspectives, or even doing events, you're like, yeah, I can't do that event there, but I can do an event there that I can't do in the Northwest.
Exactly.
Or things like that, where it's like,
Exactly.
you just play to the strengths, and then everything's just so fucking unique. And that's where I enjoy what we're able to do, where to translate this to work a little bit, where it's like not trying to just like drop this Seattle, Bainbridge Island Snowboy idea somewhere. It's like,
Right.
I'm trying to come up with a way to complement what everybody's doing in their zone and what's already organically happening, but just fucking give it some juice.
That's
you know what I'm
super
saying?
rad. Yeah.
So like, that's the perspective, and that's what keeps me so stoked and like going. That's where I love going. We were just going out to Trollhagen or out to Vermont or New Hampshire, just all these places where like I'll be going to the airport and they're like, where are you coming back from? I'm like, no, I'm going to Minneapolis
Yeah.
with a snowboard bag. And they're like, and I'm in SeaTac, and they're like, why?
Yeah,
like, no, this is gonna be dope.
Yeah.
So,
Well, that's an important part of the thing too, is like when I moved from Ontario, so I'm an Ontario transplant, which a lot of people can relate to, because when you move to a place, you have this like, you can't believe that it's real compared to growing up here and you're already acclimatized to it, right? Like if you grew up in Vancouver and you came to Sudbury, Ontario to hike in the rocky little tiny hills that are there,
right.
I don't think you would get it. Like, I don't think you'd want to do it.
Right.
You wouldn't go there and be like, oh, this will be fun. Like, you have to be from there, and then you're moving and you go, oh, wow. You go to like Search Mount. You go to like a bigger mountain and you're like, wow, this is cool. 600 vertical feet. Amazing. Right. And then you get to like Mount Hood, for me, was just, it was a mind blower.
Right.
That something like that existed. Like, it physically felt like we're going somewhere where we could fall off a mountain in a rock slide or an avalanche.
It's steaming.
It's crazy.
It's venting
It
as
might
we speak.
explode. Right. There's people climbing it with ropes and crampons and stuff and ice axes. And you're going, this is mind-blowing. Then you get used to it and you're like, I can ride this. Yeah. This is a big, giant blue run. This is sick. And oh my God, look at all these crazy features that they built.
Right.
I think it takes that kind of adventurer's mind to really get the most out of that kind of traveling. Mm-hmm. But like you're saying, you could be from Mount Baker, right? Rankwood talked about going to Alaska and being like, yeah, I get this. Right. Whereas if you were a Colorado guy, you might be like shitting your pants.
Right, right.
You can be from Baker and go to Trollhagen and be like, this is a cool scene. Right. What these people are doing is fucking awesome.
You just can't compare it. That's, to me, it's like, it's again, this my lifetime of trying to like eliminate comparisons and contests out of stuff, where it's like, no, just, it isn't better. Like, don't be making a list what the raddest fucking resort is. Right. Just go to fucking Trollhagen and embrace what the community is and what's going on. Right. And people are fucking juiced, and this energy is rad, and Yeah, it's not Mountain Baker.
Right.
Or any of that. It's just like, just let it be itself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just don't have all these rules and fucking
Exactly.
boxes that you got to put shit in.
The ride to wherever I rode with Chad Otterstrom in Colorado, and the experience of hiking up at altitude, and I'm from sea level. I'm
It's
losing my
fucking
breath.
worse. That's why I don't
like,
do events in Colorado.
Yeah, it's
there's
crazy.
literally a 30% tax that I add on.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, I live at 75 feet above sea level.
Yes.
And I'm 51, and I don't operate well at 14,000.
You need to acclimatize for sure. Even Tahoe was like difficult.
Oh, yeah.
It's like 3,600 feet at the lake.
Yeah.
Like it's crazy. Biggest alpine lake in North America for sure. But like the experiences where, like definitely riding with locals anywhere you go. That's the difference between, look at the Seymour kids, Devin and the Seymour kids. I don't know why I said it like that. The Seymour kids created this fun way of riding Mount Seymour that to this day, I don't think there's a better resort you could go to, like on the right day,
Right.
for Seymour, and then people go there.
If you have that line, if you have that way, yeah.
If you went there,
You
just
show up on your own, riding single all day, you're like, okay.
you're gonna be like, this is brutal.
Yeah.
This isn't even a resort.
Right.
I say it on mic at least a few times a year. If Seymour was at Whistler, like just a zone accessed by those same lifts at Whistler, it would be busy.
Right.
People would want to be there.
Yeah.
It's so much fun.
Yeah.
It's just incredible.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, when did you start as because the hindrance to traveling as a teenager, I was a dirtbag snowboarder. Like I had to kind of like hide it in a trip, right? Like go to Vegas to buy snowboards for the shop.
Okay.
And then get somebody to pay for my van ride up to, Utah.
Right.
And ride. Or go to the Montana trip for the Trans World thing through the shop.
Right.
Like what was your introduction to because obviously you travel when you're young.
Yeah, well, I mean, I didn't start snowboarding until I was 18. Just didn't have it. I started in 1990, and I didn't have any money, so like we didn't have access to anything like that. So, for the majority of the time, it was just like, yo, I love this and stuff, but there wasn't any. I didn't have any of these delusions of grandeur on like, this or that. So I was just like, okay, I want to do this. I didn't even know you could make money out of it. Like the idea of it being your profession or livelihood wasn't ever there. It's just like, I fucking love this and I want to do this forever. So to me, it was just like, well, winter's like 5 months long. I'm like, I'm going to go, like, I'll go frame houses, or I sold fruit on the side of the road with a ski buddy of mine. Like I just would work seasonally and when it really bit, it was like, okay, well, if I'm not living in my house and I don't have a car payment and all this, so I'm like, I bought a 71 Volkswagen bus.
Oh, wow.
And not a pop top, anything cool like that, just a cheap bus. And then I had a futon in the back, and it was just like, well, I just reduce your overhead. So my whole thing was just like, I was, I'd ride, 200 days a year for a couple of years in a row. But it was all just self-financed. It was like, and you just go wherever you want. And then eventually, like, I would meet a few people through the industry and stuff. And like, but it was almost had to be like my buddy Ted Irwin. We had some friends, mutual friends, some of the riders that I knew, the OG guys at Mount Spokane, were like, grew up with like Luke Edgar, who was at K2 and stuff. So like Mike Coates, Terry Ray, Johnny Nagahiro, like those are the OG dudes that I would like follow around at Mount Spokane. Rad. And I was like, 18, 20-year-old guy following people around. So looking back, it's kind of funny. It wasn't like I was just like this little shitty kid. Right. Like it's kind of like this. I looked young, so maybe I still anyway. But so through that relationship, they would do K2 would put on this Mount Rainier hike every June for a couple of years.
K2 did like some pretty rad stuff. There was a Mount Baker, like after they closed, they put on like a huge. They made like a tent cave and stuff and
Festival.
Festival.
My band played Festival.
No way.
I was the MVP of the first Festival.
Yeah. Yes.
So anyway, that time with K2 was dope, and so like my friends from Spokane grew up and went to school with Luke Edgar and Haley and that whole crew that was running K2 at the time.
Rad.
And so Mike and the guys would come and cook at this retailer Mount Rainier hike every June. And so that's where I met Ted Irwin, who at the time was the Northwest rep and for K2 and for Dragon. And then so I met him. He lived in West Seattle, and he would be like, you know, I was good at hiking. I would work and get stuff done, and I was good at talking with people. And so he would be like chasing me. He had for years. He kind of through all these little events and stuff. He was like trying to pull me into the industry, and I'm just like, I'm good. You give me I was like, okay, I need 2 boards and a pair of goggles. Like, what do I have to? What's the least I need to do so I'm not obligated?
I love that.
And so, doing things like that, festival, all that. And then, and then eventually I'd started Snowboy at the time, just to make events better than what was going on, what we had. So it really there's no long-term thing. It's like me and my buddies were complaining about all the events. And so we just did our own. I started doing my own instead. And then, Ted Irwin, he had heard, he knew the folks up at Snoqualmie Pass and knew that they were looking for, I believe, a snowboard coordinator at the time. And he name dropped me. And then that's how I eventually got into the industry. And then to your point, then I've been able to, really the traveling, the experience, all of that. Yeah. But it was like, it came really late.
So that traveling and everything.
It was like 5 or 6 years before anything was even, I was just happy riding POW up in the Kootenays and shit,
Yeah, of course. That's sick.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what is the first official event? Are you doing small events at the mountain?
Yeah. So I was at Mount Spokane, living in the parking lot and surviving off of like the generosity of the locals buying me nachos,
Wow. Yeah, that's not a lucrative job, snowboard coordinator.
No, that was before any of that. So
before.
Like the first event was like I was just like a guy, I was just a local and I was riding. But then there's Eric Peterson. So I'd instructed for like we were the first snowboard instructors on Mount Spokane for what and stuff. And then we didn't do that anymore. But they were they wanted to do this big air event. The Mount Spokane Big Air Festival, they called it, and they didn't know what they were doing, and they asked if I could just like help. Yeah. And again, so we built this. It's it's this hip high little jump, and I spray tagged Big Air on the side, and like it's so funny. But like that was the first event, but it was just run at least correctly. Like it wasn't full of itself and all that. Yeah, that's how it started.
I was a part of events up here on Grouse. So the concept was a 3-event series for locals. That was my concept. Now, my concept wasn't 100% of what was going on at the table. Right. The owner of the store brought in an events coordinator that he knew. And event coordinators typically, and I'm looking at one right here, but typically they kind of have a weird thing going on. Yeah. Like it's kind of a schmoozy marketing deal versus
it's usually complete bullshit.
Compared to being connected with the people that you're actually throwing the event for.
And it's people that aren't doing anything either. It's like office space.
Right. Yes.
What do you say you do?
Yes,
it's like
exactly.
It's just constant, but they all stumble upwards and get fantastic jobs. In the industry,
Skipper was he worked on World Cup downhills or something, and he was a really nice guy. Mm-hmm. But he was disconnected from the community. No offense, he's not going to listen to this, but he was disconnected from the community. But he could speak the language of the boss of the store. Right. So I said, listen, what we should do is we should have a 3-mountain series event to do cross-pollination between Grouse, Cypress, and Seymour. Right. And invite any pass holder from any mountain to this event and have the mountains honor their passes for that day. Right. Like it's a one day at each mountain. How cool would that be? To have everybody that's into snowboarding, into hitting jumps or hips or whatever it was that we were going to do. It was a Big Air. So Boardroom Big Air it was called.
You know it.
I think the first one at Cypress was canceled because of weather. Right. The one up here was a disaster because of weather and because logistically nobody had thought, okay, if it takes us a minute and a half to send one guy down
Oh yeah.
And he jumps the jump, and then the judges do the thing.
Nobody did the math for 8 minutes.
Endless amounts of entrants. Right.
Yeah,
like I did the math on Hill, and I said, if we do it this way,
we'll be here for 4 days.
we don't have enough time. It was going to be a night finals. That was like kind of the.
Oh, dope.
It would have been sick if you could see, which you couldn't. There was spray paint and branches on the jump. So, and then the third one at Seymour went off kind of without a hitch. I think the first one at Seymour was dope. And they brought down Nick's from Whistler to announce, and there was good prizing, and it was a lot of fun. And then the event coordinator went, see?
Yeah.
And then Pear, the guy who ran the shop, he wanted a raise. And he said, if I do the event coordination, because I think I can fucking handle this, give me the money you paid that guy, and then the event will be a part of the year. It was a really nice community event, but it ended up only being at Seymour. And the focus was on getting Peter Line to come up or getting people to come down from Whistler.
Right.
Which, if you're at Seymour, is kind of a bummer. If you spend your day at Seymour, this is your home mountain, and all of a sudden the events for international, for you to watch, it's not that fun.
Well, there's a huge part of that where, in the last probably 15 years at least of Snowboy has been focused on that. It's like you can never get it perfect, but when I was at Snoqualmie, again, it was fantastic meeting all your heroes and shit like that. But we would do a lot of events, that we'd have, absence shoots, Mac Dog, doing all these rad things where, we'd be building stuff up for videos and stuff at the time. That's where, the exposure was. And it was cool, but the locals didn't get to fucking hit any of that shit and stuff like that. Right. And so that's where I was just like, well, I would be the uninvited participant on this. So again, you just it's perspective, right? And it would be like, okay, I would have wanted to be a part of this, but I know I wouldn't be allowed to.
Right.
And so like there's some legitimacy to that. There's also legitimacy to the exposure and all the things that are going on, and you're spending money and time to make happen.
Right.
In itself. And so again, it's like one's not wrong, one's not right, but they all have relevance.
Right.
And how do you make it so that's where, we, to the point of every event now has a public element to it.
Of
where
course.
It's like, and sometimes there's a cap on, like at Holy Bully, there's a cap on the public element on the public days, because it's just,
there has to be.
The demand is so high that it's a great problem to have. But, it's like, but we're still, I don't know of anybody else that's been out there, especially for the amount of time that we've been doing it. Nobody else is ever considering those people. Like,
right.
'cause that's me. Again, you can see yourself in that. So it's like, okay, we'll do this and we'll create all these assets and all this hype and this checks all these boxes. And sometimes it's just rad to be inside those ropes too, and get to see that. There's a huge part to that. I'm very selfish on that. Like I just enjoy watching everybody go through what we've created and interpret it and do all that. But it's like there is that legitimacy of, can we do more? Like, can we add a public couple of days? And not everybody will get access, and some people will still be fucking butthurt and blow me up on Instagram. But I'm like, but I'm doing more than pretty much anybody else is, and hopefully somebody else is going to see a way and do it even better. And then I'll be like, oh shit, I didn't even think of that.
Right.
So, it's all just...
Yeah, at this point, you're leading the charge on this, which is, I'm glad that we got to that point where your events aren't just, and they are premier events. Like the big guys are there, the big names are there. They're enjoying the features you're making. The features you're making are uniquely yours. They're recognizable as a Snowboy event.
Right.
The FOMO when it happens, when you're seeing it in your feed, is like, oh, that's damn, right. That looks so fucking rad. I wish I could be there. So, but to forget about the people who live and breathe that, sunshine, right? They've got a pass. To have an event at your home mountain that you don't get to ride the features, I've had it happen.
Yeah.
And it sucks big time.
Or we would be, and then other aspects of that. So like that's one element of it. Another thing is on those big shoots that we'd have, Like we'd be out there in the fucking shitty weather, me and the park crew putting it all together and getting it all buffed out. And then the talent would show up, and then do their thing. And like, again, that's what the model was at the time.
Yeah.
But it was like, I'd sit there and it would be like, fuck this. Like some people were amazing. The majority were amazing.
Yes.
But there'd be a writer or two or a filmer or somebody involved with that crew. And they'd say something, or just the expectation, or like we were beneath them, and it was like that would just chap my ass, man. It was like I don't know what that expression is.
That's right. No,
but it would piss me off, and I'm like,
Sure.
no, that's or even to the point of sometimes when there would be we were part of SPT.
Yeah.
It was like part of the sister resorts and whatnot at Booth Creek at the time.
Yeah.
Learned so much from all those guys, but also like sometimes there would be this, and I don't know that it was intentional. I'm sure it wasn't even intentional, but like all of a sudden, like the A dudes would show up builder wise.
Yeah.
And then we would just be supporting. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and so it was you were getting that same thing, even though you were working you were still a part of it, but you still felt like you weren't really an integral part of it.
Yes.
And so that's where what we try to do is like, it's a meshing. It's like, here's a concept that I've got or that I came up with, or my crew, or a group of people that put together. But again, it's like, it's not drawn out on a fucking AutoCAD file.
Right.
And like, here's the general concept. And then I want to get some of your feedback, and I'm going to work with your crew. And like, Snowboy can show up and get it done all by ourselves if we need to.
Right.
But the best case scenario is that we're working with your crew. We're meeting you. We're talking. We're having those conversations. We're showing you stuff that we've picked up. Maybe we're picking something up from you.
Yeah.
Like, it's just that it's us.
Yeah.
It's not them. It's us. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yep.
And
then
to me, that's
the riders too.
And having that's like Snowboy all the way through.
Rad.
It's like, whether it's riders, whether it's media, that's why everybody rakes at our events, where nobody's above anybody else.
Right.
Like,
yeah,
I'll be down there doing the fucking hardest job.
Yes.
Even though I don't fucking have to. But it's like, no.
Leading by example. Anyway. and there's an equality there. You know, I talked about it when you've come through the gate at first. It's like, you know, Disneyland or something. There's a mythology to it. Like, I'm at a fucking Snowboy event. This is incredible. There's outside the fence and I'm inside the fence. This feels great. And for the first few minutes, people are just getting acclimatized to, oh my God, is that Jess Camara? Oh my God, is that Blake Paul? Like, there's like real huge celebrity riders there.
Yeah.
And then as it goes on, you realize, oh my God, everybody's just kind of doing the same thing. They're waiting for a weather window. They're waiting for that vibe to feel good. You might be on the course at the same time as somebody who's just totally crushing it, like Fridge.
Yeah.
And you're like, there's no feeling of like, I'm not worthy. It's just like, people are riding through it at all ability levels
and doing different things off of the same things.
Right.
So that comes back, like, that's what, like, Snowboy really starts to hit a groove on some of that when we start the Holy Oli revival is one of, there's two components to like what made Bowley in my head.
Yeah.
Is an event series called Shut Up and Snow Skate.
Yeah.
And an event called the Holy Oli Revival. And so they both have equal parts on this, but getting to your point with that, there's a vibe that was created with the Holy Oli Revival. And so that was, when I was first at Snoqualmie, again, I didn't ride there and stuff. So I'm a sponge, right? I'm just trying to soak up and learn as much as I can. And so I'm talking to old heads. I'm getting to meet all these people that I idolize from afar. But then I'm also talking to like the kids that are just out in the park every day and shit like that.
Rad.
And it's like, yeah, I'm older than everybody at the time, than those kids I'm talking to. But like, people didn't even. This is like 2001, and there's people that didn't know who Peter Lyon or Jamie Lynn or Joey McGuire were, let alone like, the deep cuts below that.
Sure.
But I was just like, holy shit, are you kidding me? And like, And they didn't know that they grew up there and stuff. Because at the time, like Snoqualmie, like you would just, we mentioned this earlier, it's like it's where you learned to ride, where the ski bus was. And then by the time, but you didn't claim it. Like you went there and you spent time there.
Right.
And you probably had a blast.
Yeah.
But like once your buddy got a driver's license, you were going somewhere else.
Totally.
And so my vibe was like, oh, we got to create I wanted to create pride in the zone. And so some of that was like seeing what had happened before you, but I didn't want to be that bullshit marketing stuff where you just hitch your wagon to something that happened organically by itself, and then you're claiming it like you did it. Like, fuck that.
Right.
So it was like, no, we got to do something. But like what I want to do is re-establish that. So the whole idea of the Holy Holy Revival was we did it at this area where some of the very first events ever happened in Washington State, in the whole West Coast, for that matter, probably.
Wow.
And so it was there was this giant water tower that had always been painted to look like during that era, it was painted to look like an Olympia beer can.
Okay.
It's proportionate, same type of size.
Sick.
So Travis Rice jumps off of it in his part in Pop in the Absinthe movie.
Dope.
So if you want to see that can, that's where you go. That's a whole nother segment. It was an amazing week. But so there's this water tower and it looks like that. And so I'm like, I've always bit graphics and stuff. It's like, oh, we could do that. Instead of Olympia, it could say Summit. Yeah. So instead of Olympia, it's the water. It said Summit at Snoqualmie.
Right.
And so a group of us basically put up a bunch of scaffolding and repainted that tower and all that. And my whole idea there was like, this is sacred ground because some of these events happened here. So to me, there's the holy, and then this is an Oli beer can. Yeah. So it was like the Holy Oli makes total, it rhymes. That's where that comes from. And then the revival, even though it had never been, is like, it's bringing back and celebrating like what happened specifically on Snoqualmie Pass, but also in the greater Northwest.
Sick.
And so it was Holy Oli Revival, a celebration of Northwest snowboard pride was the name.
Dope.
And so the kind of concept was, it was like, we're doing it now. It's a nod to the past while looking at the future in the present, if you're trying to break it down. So everybody's involved. Yeah. And the whole concept was, we just kept, it evolved over the 8 years that it was there. And what was it? So we started 2004 and it ran to 2011, my last year there. But like the idea was, I didn't want it to be a contest. It was just a gathering of people, which is why after the first time I went to the Mount Baker Bank Slalom, the 12th year, 1996, I think, I went to the Mount Baker Bank Slalom, and the gathering was so fucking amazing. I started Snowboy, just trying to I don't even know if I directly connected it to, but it's like that gathering is what I'm looking for, the community.
Rad.
Like whatever we're doing, as long as we're it's an excuse to hang out.
Yes,
it's a reason to put it on, to not wash out on that plan.
Was 96 the year that there was really good snow and everyone was just free riding the whole time as well? I mean,
I went 10 years in a row, and they were all awesome. Yeah. 1 year it rained and it was still awesome. Yes. So they all blurred together.
Yeah.
But that was a huge, this was like finding your tribe.
Totally.
To sound like a kook on that. Like it was like, this was my people. I still have friends and experiences from that. I mean, I could talk for 2 or 3 hours just on that week that I spent at Mount Baker. But so, that's what we were trying to do. But also like create this gathering, but eliminate all the bullshit. And so the whole idea of everything we do, when I describe our events now, like we'll have a rider meeting or something, and it's like, okay, 10 to 3, and we're going to start, and it's going to end, and there's rad shit in the middle. Do whatever the fuck you want.
Yeah.
Be productive. Like, we don't want to be like, everybody's you got a job to do. Have fun, get some clips, do things like that. But it's like, it doesn't need to have, we don't need heats. We don't need this. That stuff is extra.
Right.
And if you're into that, there's so many rad zones and people that are doing that fantastic. So I'm like, I'm not going to try to make something that already exists. But to me, there's this. And like at the time with the Holy Holy Revival, it was like, again, I wanted, so like this one, I'm watching, I forget, it was like the 5th or 6th year of this thing. We had like amazing weather in like the line, like the who's who. It was like the biggest like who's who lineup year, right? Like
Rad.
Jeff Brushy showed up out of nowhere.
Wow.
Like this is the first year Wes Makepeace came down
Damn.
and was playing in the after party.
Sick.
And Ville Leoma's there, and Danny Cass is there.
Holy shit.
And all this, like, all that's happening, and I'm watching this, and I'm geeking out, and, like, all the Think Tank crew, and, like, there's all this stuff happening, and I'm just soaking it in. But then also, like, at the time, like, Jacob Krugmeyer's dropping in, and at the time, he's, like, 10, 11, 12 years old. Like,
Rad.
But, and obviously he's killing it now and everything, but it's like, nobody's out of place. Like sometimes people will talk about Bully and reference it to like, oh, it's kind of like a border cross because everybody just gets to hang out and there's no pressure. And I thought about that a bit, and I'm like, there's a touch, but I'm like, in a border cross, which I cut my teeth on back in the day, I was like, you're just hanging out with the same, your category.
Totally.
Yeah, you get to hang, and you get to make 2 runs a day.
Right.
I'm like, so there. I get what you're saying on that, but I'm like, it's not that. I want it to be, if I relate to that person that's 20 years older than me, or that, whatever, it's just open.
Yeah.
And so kind of that's where, again, that's the concept. That's why Holy came off and came into Bully. Was, to me, that was it was the one piece that could be moved, because the other thing was connected to a physical structure, that water tower.
Yeah.
So the Revival's gone. Oli is gone. Holy is this, like, to me, it's the vibe that was created over those 8 years.
Yeah.
So I'm going to stick that in my pocket.
Yeah.
And that's what we're going to keep into.
So what's the first Bully? First Bully is where?
First Bully's in Japan.
Wow.
But
how does that happen?
It's kind of a back step to that, because before again, I mentioned, there's the Holy Bully, the Holy Oli Revival and Shut Up and Snow Skate.
Right.
So this is the other side of this coin that I promise intersect here if you bear with me.
Yeah, yeah.
But so Shut Up and Snow Skate is the first event that that's my idea at Snoqualmie. So I'm there the first year. I've just been inheriting other people's things that were on a list.
Sure.
And I was just a part-time seasonal worker at the time. But then immediately they were like, oh, this guy, obviously he's passionate, whatever. It becomes a year-round role. So in 2003, I think it is, we start Shut Up and Snow Skate. And at the time, Mervin is specifically GNU is like, that's when the bi-deck, the 2-deck snow skates are just going bananas. Yeah. And so that's a big push on there.
Which they actually work. Those ones, like so there was a long period of time where we had those little flat snow skate things that, sure, they work like a skimboard. You can put a thing in front of them, slide on it, flip around. As long as you're going in a straight line, you're good. Yeah. But those GNU, the bi-decks, you can ride them on a chairlift. You can do whatever.
Yeah, it was dope. Yeah. And so Temple always called them shitty day enhancers too. Like you're just like, yeah. And so yeah, that was like it was a cool time there. And so we made this push and through marketing and these events was able to like legitimize and get chairlift access to these.
Damn.
And so we used that and pushed it through. This event, Shut Up and Snow Skate, tying together with a local, with the manufacturer, all that. It part of it was the event because it was just a blast to do this thing, but also it was like, fuck, why couldn't we have these? It's not the work that Jake and everybody did to get snowboards allowed. Right. They already broke the egg, but it's like there was some similarity. There was still a hesitancy.
Oh, absolutely.
So yeah, we started Shut Up and Snow Skate, and that was so we were building little small like skate park size bowls.
Dope.
But we'd make like pre-curved coping and build the bowls to that. So we're building bowls in 2003, and Shut Up Snow Skate ran for 6 years. So during that whole time, there's always these bowl elements specifically to the events up at Snoqualmie. We end up making this a whole like a 3 to 4 stop tour a year.
Wow.
Through other Booth Creek resorts at the time. And this was where we were able to use like the precedent at Snoqualmie that allowed snow skating. We're like, oh, now we're going to we're going to do an event, but it's also like an exhibition to show you.
So sick.
And so it was able to all of a sudden, then all of a sudden Loons allowing it. We're doing an event there.
Yeah.
We're doing an event at Sierra Tahoe, and they're allowing it.
Wow.
And all these places are sister resorts, kind of working inside the corporate structure.
Amazing.
And it's allowing all this. And so that's, I'm proud of that point. But so we get to, like, I want to say this, one of the last years of Shut Up and Snow Skate. Sorry, I need a reference there. I think 2007. We build this big standalone. It's like from the very front, it's a quarter pipe, probably about 20 feet high. It's hips on the sides, and then in the middle of the quarter pipe, there's a channel about 7 or 8 feet wide, and it goes into, and then there's a bowl in the gut of this thing. So it was like, I drew this on a napkin one morning type of thing. It's like, oh, that would be cool. And so we build this just for Shut Up and Snow Skate, and it's pissing rain, and the event was what it was. There's really hardly any photos from that one. It's a bummer. But so we did this event, and then a week later, we're doing a Ms. Super Park qualifier with Snowboarder magazine. Yeah. So I'm hanging out with T-Bird and Bridges, and there's only like 5 or 6 women, I think, at this thing. So there's a decent amount of time to standing, kind of waiting around as the laps and stuff are going. And like Bridges is looking down to his left, and he's looking at this fucking pile of snow that like Think Tank had been filming on after the event. So it's probably worn. It's like, what the fuck is that?
Yeah, yeah.
And so I'm like, oh, this is that thing. We built that for a snow skate event or something like that. He's like, oh my God, what the fuck? He's like, we need to get Peter Line up here. And, and he kind of dug what that feature was. The next year, we're doing a Holy Ole revival at that same base area because there was a landslide over at Hyack that took out the whole fucking resort. Whoa. And so we're moved it over. But anyway, I get a call from Pat, and he's saying they're doing these things. Their Snowboarder magazine is running these stories called Super Sessions. And so it was basically just like teaming up with a brand, and they'd bring a bunch of people together, and it was like an 8, 10, 12-page story and promoted. And so the idea, he was like, basically, could we rebuild that bowl feature from the year before? Yeah. And just dress it up even more. Sure. And so I was like, fuck, that would be dope. So we build this big version of that. We get some good weather, things like that. It's got pool coping on it, all this. Oh, wow. The Volcom team comes up. It's like Vilay's there and Gigi's there, even though he fucked up his knee, and Pat Moore's there, and Zach Marbin, and Elena Height, and Blum, and then we got like local. We got Hironaka into the mix and stuff like that. So it was just this rad session. I think we did. It's like 3 days long. Jamie Lynn came up, and the last evening, I think, he came in and spray painted the eyeball flowers, which later on you'd see everywhere. But up at that point, I'm sure he'd been tagging them all over the place. But that was the first time I'd seen him. Sick. So those are all painted in the background, and we ended up getting this. There's a Scott Sullivan photo of. So Austin Hironaka is doing this hand plant on blue pool coping inside this bowl. The sun's behind him. You can see the Jamie eyeball flowers in the background. It's done so well. Like, and to this day, I'm like, but Austin was riding for Air Blaster, and I'll stand to it to my dying day. If Austin was on Volcom, that would have been the cover. It's like, it's one of the most. I absolutely just adore that fucking photo. It's beautiful, and but looking back at that, I refer to that as like Bully Zero. Yep. So to me, it's like the height of at the time. So that's like 2008. That's the height of bowls being built, to my knowledge, in the U.S. And so I'm getting closer here on on how we tie into Japan. So in that similar time frame, we're doing a lot of stuff with Snowboard Connection, legendary shop in Seattle. Shop. We lost our fucking Sonics and SnowCon, I believe, in the same year. Anyway, still bitter about both. Yeah. But one of this cat, Kenji Kato, just a phenomenal human being. he worked at SnowCon and helped on their events and stuff. And he would come up and, just be involved with the events that we'd be doing. His visa ended up expiring. And so he had to go back to Japan. And so sometime, probably the week before he had to go back, my wife Smiley and I went out to Mama's and ate some burritos with him, and we're just like, wishing him well and sending him off. And it was like, hey, if you're down, we had a good rapport. I'm like, I'd love to do some events in Japan. Like at some point, let's team up.
Had you been to Japan at that point?
Yeah,
no.
yeah. It was just like, no, but this is cool. Like I've always had like,
Japan.
Fuck, why not?
Japan.
That'd be dope. I want to go there.
Yeah.
And so, fast forward a little bit. I left Snoqualmie, and then started at Mervin Manufacturing at Libtech and GNU, and as we created a new role there, and as like global events manager, I believe it was called.
Wow,
pretty dope.
Yeah, no
but it was
shit.
like, okay, well, we created all these things that work in the Northwest. I'm like, this shit'll work anywhere, in my opinion.
Yeah, of course.
And so it was like, okay. And one of the things that I wanted to do was start getting to Japan. So my first trip to Japan was through, like on with Mervin, was like on a sales thing with Mike Miyazawa,
Sick.
like the OG distributor in Japan and stuff. So I went out there and it's like, oh wow, this is killer. And then Kenji was kind of working in the industry in Japan, so there was crossover there. And then so then it was like, okay, been there once. It's like, let's do an event. But like I wanted to start with something smaller and achievable.
Yeah.
And so we did these things at the time we were doing. I had this event at Snoqualmie that we branched out to all over the place. It was called Boxes for Days. And so like if you've seen like those Boxzilla lines or something like that at resorts,
yes,
nothing.
Totally.
It was Boxes for Days with an asterisk, and it was called, the asterisk said, a ridiculously fun day involving lots of boxes. And it's just building these 200-300 foot just ridiculous box lineups, and maybe one person would get it. It wasn't really skill.
Yeah.
You just locked in and you got it. So anyway,
yeah.
This is something you could do just about anywhere and replicate it, and it was just fun and like, it was good. So that was the first event we did in Japan.
Yeah.
And so I tied that in with Kenji. He did a lot of the behind the scenes stuff, things like that.
Rad.
And that's where the first Snowboy events in Japan happened.
Yeah, that's why, I've heard it a couple of times. Like, didn't that shit start in Japan? But I mean, like, as you just said, there's 8 years leading up to the...
Right. And so
this.
even Japan starts. So that's like that's the first event, the first Snowboy event in Japan. And then the next year we come back and do another Boxes for Days at San Osaka. Or that was first. Anyway, we do 2 Boxes for Days events in Japan. And I believe the second year is when we doubled up and had the first Holy Bowly.
Right.
So like my whole thing at Mervin was like I told them, here's all these events I want to do. But in the back of my head, I'm like, I want to do this thing called Holy Bowly. And so basically I made it. It wasn't authorized or like on the list when we started the year.
Right.
But in my head, I'm like, I'm going to save enough money on all these other things.
Yeah.
I'm going to bring in everything under budget. And if I do my job right, my reward is going to be doing another event.
This is incredible.
I had mentioned it to Pat Bridges, and so like that. So Snowboarder Mag was going to do a story on this thing, so that kind of helped legitimize some stuff.
Yeah.
And then I talked with Evan at Lefevre, who was at Monster at the time, and he got behind it, and that was actually like the funds that were able to kind of help launch it. And where I was going with Holy Bowly was that in those visits that I had been at in Japan, these fun days events, stuff like that, and I'd just be seeing what's going on. There was this bowl culture already there.
Rad.
So like again, it was like when I was in Spokane, seeing stuff in the Cascades and being like, "Yo, I think that's my people," but I'm not there.
Right.
And so I'm in Seattle building these bowls, and I'm like, "There's my people," and they're building bowls over there. But to me, a lot of what I saw the most of was like a lot of surf-inspired bowls, a lot of small feature, hand-built stuff,
Totally.
amazing, awesome, rad stuff. But also I was like, okay, there's a person or two in the States that is doing this. There's a whole culture that's already here. And what I wanted to bring to the table was more of a skate park kind of vibe. Like, again, Northwest, like it's the best concrete skate parks in the world, especially at the time.
Right.
It's like, that's the vibe that I want to bring. So it's with the slashing, with the turns, I want to have some air. I want to have some punk rock, like that vibe in it too. So to me, I wanted to start it in Japan as a nod to where this culture was already thriving.
Dope.
There was a scene there, and it was happening all over the place, and there's so many amazing people involved. But then, like, I also thought we had a different take on it, so it wasn't like, so we were bringing something of value to it.
Yeah,
that's my headspace in all of this. And then, working with Kenji, we talked to Happo One in Hakuba. And we lined it up, and that's where the first Holy Bowly was. And what's funny on all this, and hopefully we have enough time for all these. Yeah, each one of these Bowly stops has this almost didn't happen element to it,
weather-wise, or just like
everything above.
Yeah,
so it's just an anomaly. But so the first year. So we're doing Holy Bowly at Happo One in Hakuba, and in my trips before it was lining up, I wanted to really work with some of the builders that were doing some of these other events that I'd seen, and was like, yo, this is me, you're me, we're peers on this. And so one of them was Bubbles, who's built so many amazing bowls, part of the Gentum Stick crew.
Rad.
Just a unbelievably rad individual. Another one, Goro Komatsu, who is doing all these building events too. He at the time he owned Replant Snowboards. Just two stellar dudes, right?
Rad.
And so I'm like, okay, like we can kind of work together. And so we're putting this whole thing together. The poster comes out. So the poster is a white field, just white field of snow, basically, with that same eyeball flower that Jamie painted in 2008 on my biggest bowl to date.
Yeah.
So that's in the middle of the poster, and it's got snow on the branches and stuff. So the whole idea there is like this seed that was planted in 2008 now has just popped out of the fucking snowpack.
Rad.
And has become this new thing. And so that's like the visual to this. And so we're lining this whole thing up. We've got Goro, we've got Bubbles, Kenji's the man behind the scenes, putting it all together. We're in Japan. We start this build, and all of a sudden there's this. People are freaking out, and it's like, what's going on? And so we had built a Facebook events page, because that was a thing, right?
Sure.
At the time.
Yeah.
And in the description, I'm lining it up, and like a lot of the things I'm always trying to do, it's like I'll get my credit on it when it's successul and everything, but
sure.
It's not. I don't need to be out here beating my chest on it. Like
no. Right.
So with that is like I'm trying to highlight who we're working with, all that, legitimize what we're doing, right? And so it's listing. It lists Bubbles, it lists Goro, all in some other people that are involved with this thing. It turns out that earlier Goro had been popped for marijuana, which is a big deal in Japan.
Okay.
And so, but he had done all this stuff, whatever he had to do to make right with that.
Yeah.
But there was this the resort was trying to almost, it's like there was a shame on the event type of thing.
Damn.
And that it couldn't happen because Goro's name was on this thing.
Right, like a political
kind
of
and again, it's a cultural thing that I
Yeah.
So the whole event stops. The build stops. We have a whole day, and as all this is happening, this giant rainstorm comes in. And so it's just pissing rain for like an entire day.
God.
And all of a sudden, so this is like a big fucking deal. And so there's all the management from Happo, we're in this big room, and it's just tables the whole way around it. And like all these like businessmen, like the dudes, I'm assuming,
sure,
from this resort or its holder or whatever. There's
Yeah.
just a lot of dudes in suits, and there's people behind them that are like, it looked like a Senate hearing.
Oh my God.
Like there's Bubbles, there's Goro, there's Endo, the photographer, there's myself, there's Kenji. I'm the only fucking white guy. I'm the gaijin that's hanging out there, and we're having to explain like what. And so I'm using. We're going online. I'm finding an electronic PDF of Bowley Zero,
right,
to show, because their whole thing is like Goro's putting this event on, is
right,
how they
right,
were coming,
right.
And we can't have that. And I'm like, fuck, man, like I probably get like this job might disappear if this event doesn't happen. Like everybody's trusting.
Wow.
We brought
Yeah,
20
yeah,
people across
yeah.
the sea, like, so I'm freaking out, right? And so we're showing that it's like, no, this predated. Like here's the artwork. Is this so? Like again, this photo that Scott Sullivan took of Austin Hironaka is up on a projector in front of all these fucking people.
Oh,
and
wow.
and my counsel or whatever is like describing what's going on. And we're in this meeting for a couple of hours. I'd have no idea what anybody's even saying, right?
Yeah.
And so this is like the most like Twilight Zone episode of my life. But anyway, at the end of it, there's all these apologies that we do, like all this, and I get it. So then the event is canceled, but a new event, basically the same name, can now happen. So like that, again, within the structure,
it's like Goro's event has been canceled,
and then this thing
and this new event.
Yeah, and I think there was some. We couldn't have there was some stipulations to what we couldn't do.
Yeah.
Part of it also was that we had to go plow down everything we'd built and start over from scratch. So there would be no fingerprints of what have, and that may or may not have happened.
Right.
But regardless.
Right.
So anyway, so this was this giant thing, and then it happens. The event happens.
Nuts.
It's fantastic.
Yeah,
it's like this.
It gets worldwide attention.
But oh my God, you imagine like once that feeling. Every event once it starts, there's this my shoulders rise.
Yes,
and it's okay, different levels of anxiety or pressure or whatever. But I'd never had that before. There's songs that I was listening to in my headphones that I play at every bowlie during the build. These are songs that like got me through that shit.
Nice.
And that I'll play just as an honor to that.
I can't
so
believe that.
So it happened and it was fantastic. But again, as we go, you'll see every fucking one of these things on this thing that's from jump. It was so well received.
Yes.
And so worth everybody's involvement and starts to create this whole new thing within the industry. But it is fought by different elements the entire fucking time, almost
nuts.
up to present.
It is up to present because Tits is still fighting its way into, I don't want to say mainstream, just like the fact that it's Tits, that's a big part of it. Like it's inseparable now.
Right.
You couldn't change it to, some other name. It just wouldn't make sense.
Oh yeah.
It's got its branding. That
was the whole thing with its Tits on that. And to jump over to that, whereas like when I left Mervyn, I was like, I really wanted to start building some events with some of my really good friends that I also just happened to be some of the most amazing snowboarders in the world.
Rad.
And so when I left Mervyn, it was like the first thing I teamed up with was I called Jeno. And I was like, because he'd been supporting and doing artwork for us and being a part of all these events at Snoqualmie and at Mervyn for all this time.
Rad.
But it was just because it was the right thing to do, and he was just he's a good friend.
Where is he from?
He was from Surrey when I don't know where he's originally from, but it was the first time I'd ever heard of the word Surrey, and I was like, oh, it's kind of like a slur. Anyway.
Yeah.
But so I let Jeno, I think he was the first person that I let know that after I left Mervyn, I was like, hey, we can do stuff now. As I go, thanks for all your help. And what's something that if there's ever anything we can team up on, and I've got this dry erase board that's always hanging above my desk.
I've seen it. Yeah.
And on a portion of it is just all these names of potential. Names is how I start an event. Like, what's in a name? Fucking everything. Yeah. If you get the right name, then you build something around it. And so I had this one. It was like barely, and barrel was spelled capitalized, and then a small y, and then lowercase. An event was on that thing forever, and I was like, oh, that's just a funny play on words, and you could do something with barrels. Yeah. Anyway, so and after that, we did years of barreling events and all kinds of events with dynos. That was fantastic. Another person I wanted to team up with, Scott Stevens.
Rad.
And the projects I created with him. So we've done 7 years of the projects, like all over North America, and that's fucking amazing. And then the third person I wanted to team up on was Jess Kimura, and she'd been at Holy Holy Revivals. She'd been at the downtown. She was the first woman in the Downtown Throwdown series that we used to do. Rad. Just the most badass human on the planet.
Absolutely.
And so I think at the time, Ms. Superpark had just been pulled the plug or is on life support or something. Yeah. But anyway, I was just like, man, I want to do a women's specific event. And then I was like, I always had that phrase like that, oh, that's tits, man. Yeah. No, it's the tits. And so it was always just like this old school fucking phrase. And I'm like, wait, we built all these snow boobs, things like that. It's like, wow, there's boobs, there's tits. And then I was like, oh, this could be a women's specific empowerment type of event. Then it ends up, we bring in Megan and Lisa and the crew at B4BC. So there's a literal tits element to this. And and it's grown to this rad thing. But again, it's me and Jess coming up with this. So to me, I was like, it can't be called the Ladies' Day Out in the Slopes Smile Fest or some bullshit. It's like, here's who we are. Here's our personalities. It's gonna have some edge to it. It's
perfect.
But it took years for it to find. We're like you said, we're still working with just resorts being comfortable with the name and shit like that. So it's weird.
It's a throwback to when resorts weren't comfortable with snowboarding. It was It was such a weird thing that there wasn't. I mean, I'm sure there are places where it just happened where the guy's like, I like money. Lift tickets are my money.
Right.
So snowboarders, whatever. They want to what? They want to slide the roof of the shack? Okay, fine.
Yeah.
And this is sort of like that. They want what?
Yeah.
They want to put up banners everywhere that says it's tits.
But now it's grown. It's the biggest women's snowboard event in the world.
It's epic.
It's like, and it generates money. Yes. And exposure and income. So it's like the whole time we were right. But also it's like, it wasn't ever a part of the plan, but a couple of years ago, when George Carlin passed, it was like going through playing some of the records and shit back in the day, and it's it's one of the 7 words you can't say on TV. It's tits. Yeah, and so true. It's like there's a little like, okay, that was buried in there even subconsciously. On all that
to it for sure.
But I guess also like to me, if maybe it's a justification, but it's like if people are saying no, you're probably on the right track. You know what I mean?
Yeah, man.
Because there's a lot in this industry, and we can go on for hours on that, but it's a lot of complacency and a lot of stagnation.
It's groupthink, right? Like, so if you're going to do groupthink, then you're going to do things that have been done before that worked. Yeah. So you're going to be like, no, we need a contest format. We need a winner. We'll
make it like tennis. I like tennis.
We're going to have people on the podium. They're going to be spraying each other with bottles of champagne. It feels legit. Yeah. It feels legit to do that. And it feels safe. Yeah. And it feels very unsafe to build a bunch of snow boobs and invite the girls and call it It's Tits. It's like, does anybody... It's like the parents coming into the shop going, do the kids still say rad? And you go, like, not like that. Is it still cool to say cool? It's like, not at all like that. And it's scary. Yeah. It's scary for most people to actually embrace, what goes on at the Baked Salmon, for example, at Seymour. Like, because... on the surface, it feels like there's an outside-inside type thing. Oh, I'm not cool enough to go to that. That's how I felt, for real.
Oh, yeah.
Then I went there, and I'm like, oh, this is the epic gathering of the best. And that was where I was actually exposed to building the event is a part of the expectation of participating.
Oh,
in
yeah,
it.
yeah.
And I was like, well, you know me, Nick, I'm quite lazy when it comes to, because he works on Crystal's Cabin where I was going to take you on Seymour.
Okay.
And they'll dig, move rocks and all these things. And I'm kind of like, I like making a fire and relaxing. But then once I got up there and started actually working, and I'm not saying I did a big amount of work on baked salmon, the vibe is community.
Yeah.
The vibe is vision, and the vibe is inclusion.
Yeah.
Like there's going to be little kids, there's going to be old men, there's going to be pros, there's going to be everybody.
Right.
And it's such a fun vibe. And then when I got to Holy Bully, I'm like, I know this.
Yeah.
This is that.
I know this component.
This is it.
It's just a different dressing to it.
Yeah. And bringing it back to what you were saying, it's like if you're getting resistance and you've thought about your thing, this isn't just something off the top of your dome.
Yeah, yeah.
You've got a vision for these
Fully
things.
fucking thought out.
I cannot believe that you had a paid position at Mervyn as an events creator. That's fucking brilliant. Kudos to them.
Oh yeah,
for having
giving us that, giving me that platform.
That's epic.
And the leash to go do that shit.
And now seeing what it's grown into, it's like you took the rein and ran with it. Like it's and the driving force behind it is creativity, authenticity, all the things that are the best about snowboarding. It's awesome.
No, yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah, it's incredible, dude.
Yeah, well, that's even like into the name. Like, so that was I always like having taglines to a lot of these. Again, what's in the name, right? So Holy Bully, the tagline was an international gathering of creativity and flow. Like it just popped in my head. It's lyrics, man. But which is hilarious because you see anything that's like as Bully has increased in its people's awareness of it and stuff, like how many of those words have been included in a lot of sometimes even bigger events, but like, oh, it's all about, they just rearrange them. And it's like, that's weird. That kind of sounds familiar. You're like, okay. So again, it legitimizes everything there. But that's the hard part is when you thought it out and you've got some sort of a track record of what you've done, and you know it's going to work because you know the people that will your community. I'm like at the time it's like we're building that stuff up, and I'm like, oh well, I got Bertner, and I got Jeno, and I got Jess, and I got Bridges, Kenji. Like we're fucking fine, dude. Like
that's rad.
I might even be able to do this thing on my own.
Yeah, and
I believe in it. But this crew of people. Fuck, Yoshida's here to shoot. Liam Gallagher's doing a video. Like, it's the collective, right? Yeah, man. And so it's the community. So like, that's what's just hilarious on it. And it kind of got each one of those hiccups along with Bully or any of these events. It's a pain in the ass while it's happening, but it's kind of comical too. You know what I'm saying? Like, because to me, I'm like, it's not if, it's when.
Yeah.
Like if I got an idea in my head and it makes sense, the fucking thing's happening.
Yeah. Yeah.
It just like it's Tits. It took 3 fucking years before somebody was like, all right with the name, all right-ish with the name, And so like we're like second year of Bully, we're gonna do it in Hakuba again. We're gonna do it at a different resort, but we're gonna do it in the same valley.
Okay.
Like tickets are booked, artwork's done. Same type of stuff. The Bully Catboard, Holy Bully Catboard, that's this year. Yeah. So Jamie helped out again. He paints one of his blue cats, which is like, I'm not even a pet person, but the cats, the blue cats are fucking amazing, right? Sick. And so there's like a bowl in front of like out of snow, white background again, and the cat's just got some claws out, and he's like scraping on the bowl, like making. So anyway, And then Annette at LibTech went and took that and repositioned it, and they made it into this. All of a sudden, the idea of Holy Bully, this event concept, is now a snowboard. Like
it's
how
insane.
From this kid living in his van in Mount Spokane parking lot, surviving off of fucking bar nachos. Like, wow, you're fucking kidding me, right?
I love it.
And so, so that's that year. And I'm doing an event. We're doing the Near Canada Open at Sunday River in southern Maine.
Yeah.
And so we're out on the East Coast with our Here's Your Fucking Weekend Guy trip that for a couple of years we did at Mervyn. And all of a sudden I'm getting like emails or texts or anyway, Kenji's hitting me up and it's panic mode because there's no fucking snow in Hakuba Valley. And the resort that was totally down for this is just like, we don't want to do it now.
Yeah.
So like, that's like in 10 days.
Oh, wow.
Like we're doing the Near Canada Open, then we're flying home, packing up, and then heading to Japan for the second year of Holy Bully. And again, like the first year, there was a decent amount of parts in play, and now it's 3 times as many people coming from overseas, more people, so many domestic people coming from Japan. There's an expectation now. Before it was just, what is it?
Will this
now
work?
There's a thing.
Right.
And so now we don't have a fucken venue. So Kenji, again, fucking killing. So he's hitting up Tenjindara in the Gunma prefecture. And so he hits them up. And this is through, I believe, the owner of TJ, like Backyard Boards. Anyway, again, another amazing little small snowboard brand, because they're already doing this event up at Tenjindara every year. Minakami Vibes, I believe it's called. And so the resort knows about bowls. They do their own thing. Anyway, all of a sudden, the last second, this is the new spot.
Wow.
So we're going there, and we cruise up. And that year, it was funny because Bubbles, who had helped primarily on the first Holy Bully, he's with the Gentum crew at Whitewater.
Oh, wow.
Doing a little bowl at Whitewater in Nelson, BC,
Rad.
Which is where I was a pass holder in like 1997.
Unreal.
And I'm in his back. So we're like in each other's backyards regionally. And we're starting Holy Bully in Tenjin. And but that one we got to work with Goro on, and we didn't make a Facebook event page or fucking mention that Goro was anywhere near it. And that was absolutely fantastic. And I think that meant a lot to both of us to be able to fucking to complete that
to pull
task.
it off. Yeah, yeah.
And so that event was great. And that was year 2. And unfortunately, might not be the right word, but like that was the last event that we ended up doing in Japan. It wasn't the intention directly for it to be, but after I'd always pictured it as being something that was more of a global event. So in my head, as I'm developing any event, it's here's what it's going to look like now. Here's what it's going to look like maybe in 5 years. Here's maybe what it's going to be like 10. A lot of like long vision on this stuff. And so one of the things, especially the first 2 years in Japan, was seeing the limitations from what the resorts would give you resource wise.
Yep. Yeah.
Amazing
course.
Community, amazing. Everything was fucking tip top, but we'd have like one clunky old groomer or one one. Every resort has an excavator, but is an old excavator.
Right.
And
right.
So just what they could throw at it. And that's what
how much of the resort they're willing to let you, like what part you can have
it's
for
just
a
different.
week.
And it's
Right.
not bad or good. It's just, that's just the reality. But I was coming from all the stuff that we'd throw the resources at Snoqualmie or at some of these other events where, we'd have fleets of shit. I'm like, man, if we could take this and build it with I got 3 cats behind me and an excavator.
That's it.
But also what was rad is like what Japan was lacking as far as resources from like a US comparative from machinery and whatnot. What they had there was, again, this was the community. Like,
Right.
yeah, you don't have that, and can't groom everything out all the time, but 50 people would show up with their own fucking rakes.
That's incredible.
There's everybody knows somebody that makes tools and things like that. So it's half the day I'm looking at all these different tools, and like, it's just rad. And everybody like, no, we're just the collective us. We're going to maintain that. Like, you put in the work and you do it.
Yeah.
So that was that wasn't a thing that I'd come across before, especially coming from all these big photo shoots in whatnot at Snoqualmie and being like, fuck, they don't want to help. They'll complain about the jump, but they won't fucking help and fix it anyway.
Yeah.
So to me, I was like, wow, this is really cool. And so, that ends up being a thing that stays with Holy Bowly, and then now is part of all Snowboy events, where nobody's above the work.
Right.
Everybody puts in the time. Again, it's this idea of gathering, of community, of participation, just adds. It's an onion. It just gets more layers as we've continued on throughout the years. And so again, I wanted to see what we could do with more support, but also there was a lot of eyes on Holy Bowly, and at that time, like, let's be real, somebody was going to fucking bite that event and do it stateside and be like, look what we fucking came up with.
Right, sure.
So, there was an element of that too. And so it was like,
that happened to Palmer with Bordercross. Like, he came up with Bordercross in France with Glenn Blake in 88, 90. I can't even, I don't know. We could look that up. There is a timeline where they were there. And then, the next time he heard about it, somebody's pitching his idea back to him, saying Swatch is going to do this thing, or the Kokanee Cross that was up here or whatever. Right. And one thing I wanted to mention is that as a snowboarder, I was exposed to all sorts of different media about events, right? Mm-hmm. Like FIS is doing this thing, and Terrier's boycotting the Olympics, and fuck the French International Federation du Ski or whatever. You know what I mean? Right. But at the end of the day, the levers that you get to pull at your local events, they're very few, right? Like, you just sort of show up, you pay the money, you get the bib, you go, you do the thing. But what you're describing is a community event that moves around, that the expectation is that you're going to participate, right? Not just compete. There's not even a competitive component to it.
Yeah, so that's an excuse you can't use. Right. Oh, I'm working on my run. Right. There are no fucking runs. Dude.
No, you're just you're immersed in this community. And I said it before, I'll say it again. It's like, it's a little bit daunting at first. Mm-hmm. And then once you're inside, it just feels so great. It just feels like, oh, this is what we can do as a group. Like you were saying with the raking. Like, we can do amazing things if we start looking at stuff as a community. Yeah. Like, wow. I mean, Ben Billock coming down to fucking Seymour and putting in side hits here and there.
That's the man.
Is like, this is what we can do. Nobody's going to tell you don't do that at Seymour. Right. Because the community vibe was already laid out. Right. It's funny. I wanted to talk about it.
It's part of the culture already.
I don't know how to even bridge this topic, but like, there are rules at Seymour. There are people who want to follow those rules that are high up at Seymour. Like, don't take a picture out of bounds. Like, make sure you don't fuck around. Like, right. And then there's this relaxation that I almost don't want to throw the guy under the bus that does it. Like, that somebody up there high up gets it, but it's almost like a cool parent that's like, yeah, you can do that. Just don't let me see you doing it. Yeah. That your events don't have that. It's a block off where it's like, we're allowed to do this because this is dope. Like, that's how it feels.
Right. Well, that's cool. Yeah. But there's still a couple of rules. Like,
there's rules.
You better fucking show your wristband. Yes. You fucking don't walk up the transition.
Yes.
And everybody's fucking raking.
Yes.
And no tail blocks till the weekend. So we haven't eliminated all fucking structure, but no, that's cool. Like, that's, again, it's like it wasn't the idea wasn't the initial vision.
Right.
It's just evolved.
That's dope.
Into that. But it's like I'm very happy with what it's evolved into.
Yeah.
And I can't wait to see where it keeps going from there.
All the little creative facets of it are so amazing, like the pins and the posters and the stickers. Like in that sticker, the dust sticker became an event. Just like you're talking about, the event became a board. It's like these creative, cool things happen, and the avenues open up for you to express that creativity. I think
that's the
incredible.
Funnest fucking part, though, right?
Yeah.
It's like to me, it's the Easter eggs, it's the seeds. It's like 90% of the people probably won't ever pick up on any of that shit.
Sure.
But I'm a fucking nerd, and I geek the fuck out on that stuff.
Yeah, me too.
And so it's like, if somebody, or just like sometimes I'll be telling a story during a build with the rest of our crew or something, or whatever, and I'll just go off on this little tangent, fucking old long hairs talking there, but and then you'll see it in their eyes, like, oh fuck, I didn't even know that came from that, which started with this. Like my whole thing is like building things from inside of it. You built it's again. Then it's not. It wasn't some bullshit marketing fucking idea. It was genuine. Yeah. Like the duh thing. To your point, it's like there was all this fucking like queer community hatred that's just going on a few years ago, and it was like, yeah, I'm like, okay, I want an ally sticker. Yeah. And I'm looking around and like, okay, there's some stickers out there, but I'm like, to me, it's like it's Tits. I wanted some edge. I'm like, if this is me saying this thing, I want some more besides what's offered. So my thing is like, fucking duh. Yeah. Of course I'm an ally. Yeah. It was coming from an ally's perspective on that. And so I designed that with the same font, Futura, fucking extra thick. Same font as Holy Bully. Yeah. But smashed it together, put it in the pride flag. And it was like, I made a small batch because I just wanted it my own. Like, yeah. I just wanted to check that box. That's where it came from. And then, and to go off on this tangent, like, and then the Pink Dollar Posse crew, like Casey and Eli and Lex, and they'd been a part of our events for years. Like Jay DeForge was back at Kinko de Mayo events at Mount Bachelor and in the Near Canada Open in Maine and all this. And so they would be at our events and they'd see that sticker and they were hyped on it. And so like, oh, and I'm like, would you like one? And so I just started handing them out to them and anybody, and like all of a sudden people are like, oh, they would be repping, and it just grew from there. And then last year I was talking to Elias and Casey, and I was like, well, you guys are at all these events. What if we did Duh the movie? Or it turned out Duh the edit, but I pitched it as Duh the movie. But movie's very grandiose, so I just do YouTube videos. But it was like, yeah, okay, we're already here and we're already filming, but so let's just make an end of the year recap that highlights this community at our events. Dope. Again, didn't add any work for anything, right? But it made something even that touches some more people. That's like in its representation and shit like that. And I just love the fact that. And then so we dropped that, and then I was like, well, this is working. Do you guys want to do an event? And it's like a lot of that crew is based out of Minneapolis, and it just happens to be that I've done a lot of events at Trollhagen, and so I was like, call up Trollhagen and talk to Marcia and Adam, like, hey, what do you think about this? And they're supporting it, like, and then all of a sudden, again, it wasn't that much work. It's just the right people believing in each other, supporting each other, and all of a sudden, it's an event too, which is its first LGBTQ plus event in the Midwest, which means something, like, yes. And now, like, this is probably going to be an annual thing that just gets added to all this. And, and then it's also highlighting and making space for the community inside all of our events. So it's not just like, oh, you get this one, but not, it's just part of this adding on to the community and just making people feel as welcome as, again, you got to be good people.
Yes.
You got to play by these couple of rules.
Sure.
And if you're an asshole about it or something, they end up working their way out. But yeah, I love how all these things come out of something smaller and then build to something bigger.
It's cool.
And they cross over.
Yes.
It's like comic books.
Yeah.
It's crossover comic books in the 80s and 90s.
There
like,
you go.
It all just comes back to what you liked when you were a kid.
Well, the main thing is it's another way of sustaining that joy that snowboarding in the early days brought to us. Right. Like for me, discovering snowboarding was like this portal into this completely incredible world of outdoor nature and fucking mountain people and travel and psychedelics and taking drugs or whatever came out of it was like this community of people who are genuinely happy.
Yeah.
And to see the tip of the spear, right? Like to see the queer community out really having fucking fun, celebrating being queer and being snowboarders.
Just being themselves.
Yes.
You can see what just happened last week.
Yeah.
When we're recording this.
Yeah.
And so, just seeing the looseness of everybody. So there's other events that have happened, gatherings and whatnot within the community. And again, not trying to say that we're speaking for anything, but it's just, okay. And with the event, again, I want to, like, part of this is Pink Dollar Posse and this queer snowboarding crew that's doing amazing things on their own.
Yes.
And whatnot that I hold as very dear friends and I'm fans of. But also on this is seeing, in this instance, is showing, what good allyship can be too. Born a white, cis, blonde-eyed or blonde-hair, blue-eyed male. Got a decent amount of advantages already going on this. But it's like, how can you be, how can we be what can we do collectively on this? And so that's where the event had, it was allies and the community coming together.
Yeah, that's dope.
And then just broadcasting that, and we'll see what happens with it and whatnot.
Yeah.
But again, it's just seeing, and I can't speak for everybody that was there, but I've had some good conversations with, and like, just there was a looseness and a comfortableness, and I love the fact that we're doing it in the Midwest too, where maybe pushing. It could have been really easy maybe to try to do that right in Seattle or the Bay or something like that.
Yes, totally. Totally.
And it would have been cool and all that. But it was supposed to be there because those were where the people were.
Yeah.
And it was amazing. And
I like that part of it. Just in my own reading and learning the last few days, the idea of inviting people in as they are, as opposed to expecting some sort of check your shit at the door and come to this bro fest. This is a place where we talk like we're fucking 12-year-olds and no, you don't have to check anything at the door. Come as a complete person, whoever you are.
Come as you are, dude. Aberdeen, Washington, Nirvana.
Exactly. And enjoy sharing who you are as a complete person with the community. I think that is the gift that this generation is giving our generation.
Yeah.
And I'd like to speak to it for a second, just that, like, a lot of people that listen to the show are kind of like me. They're not against any of this stuff, but they might be confused at first of like, why do we have to celebrate this? Isn't like everybody equal? Hasn't everybody been equal forever? And you go, well, if you look at your own experiences of who you think you are as a person, and yes, being a cis white dude is like, you don't have to check anything anywhere. Right. You're just accepted everywhere. But like, I couldn't say I liked flowers or some feminine thing when I was a kid, or I would get ridiculed or beat up or, lose friends or made fun of, whatever the thing is. Well, that thing is some people's like whole identity.
Yeah.
And so they live their entire life feeling uncomfortable. Like, fuck, dude. Like, invite those people to just be who they are in your life. They don't have to put on some act for you.
Yeah.
Because you go with what the flow of mainstream, media, mainstream shit is.
And my thing is just like, I personally, like, it's not an attack on who I am or anything. It's like,
right.
Do you look at it and go, what was, we're old heads on that. So like, there were instances coming up and in the 80s and 90s and whatever where, things have changed. But it's like, again, nobody's saying that you did something wrong necessarily or during being of this generation, being of this, just being open-minded enough to your point. It's just like some people were able to be comfortable. So it's like, doesn't everybody just deserve to be comfortable as themselves? Right. And so like if I can be doing, if there's something, again, it's not fucking work in my opinion. It's just evolving a little bit as a human, right? Where it's like, for an example, if you've been to Bully any year prior to 2022, on all of the rider meetings, I would be up there saying the rules for Holy Bully. And it's like, you got to show your fucking wristband. Everybody rakes. No tail blocks till fucking Saturday. But the first rule was don't run up the tranny. Yeah. And the second rule of Fight Club was don't run up the fucking tranny.
Right.
Always just about the transitions of the features that we spend a long fucking time getting right. And I don't want somebody coming up and putting fucking post holes up and down this thing that's really hard to maintain.
Yeah.
It's the only place where that's ever been coming from. I've referred to using a tranny shovel my whole life. Yeah. Like since I've been building features.
Totally.
It's just what it is. But like I know there's trans people in my extended family. There's trans people that I call friends. And I just, again, it's this aloof unawareness, nothing malicious, but it's like never even thought of that the word tranny can be a derogatory term.
Triggering for sure.
Like, okay. Like, it's one extra syllable to say transition. And nobody's going to be bummed out on that.
Right.
It's like, it doesn't mean I was being an asshole all the times I fucking said that.
Right.
But also being like, you don't have to be right all the fucking time too, right? So you can be like, oh yeah, I never thought of that. Okay, I'll just fix that. I'll change that.
Yeah.
And it'll still slip and things like that. But like, that's even in... Yeah, so that's just a part of it now. Like it's a dead word. Like retarded was a thing that you said in the 80s.
Yeah, man.
That's a dead word.
Yeah.
And there's probably something that I'm saying right now that in 10 years, I just hope I have that I'm still comfortable enough and not too stubborn to keep evolving.
Yeah.
Like, okay, these kids, they got it figured out. Like watching like, so, I'm part of Gen X and our youngest, Ronan's he's part of Gen Z. So like Gen X and Z, the two best names, like boomers and millennials got fucked on the branding. What's in a name? Everything. Yeah. Ours sound badass. Anyway. But yeah, just seeing, in our oldest daughter, she's a millennial. Just seeing the differences in what was going through me and my wife's generation to millennial generation to now to Gen Z and these kids, and like things are good. Like things are all right.
It's a sharing
these
of
kids
information.
Got it figured out.
Right.
And there aren't just these and I think that's part of, to go off on a tangent, that is one of the things that has been positive of social media and all these things. It's like, it's representation. You can find yourself so many places. Like I came from a small logging community, and me and two dudes were the first skateboarders that were ever there. Sure. And had hippie parents in a fucking red conservative zone.
Right.
And like, and it works out, but like you do there, that aloneness was different growing up. And I can't speak for the generations before me.
Right.
But I'm like, yeah, we had landline phones. I mean, I had a pager at one point. That was a big, like, it was different. You didn't know, like, you were trying to figure out skateboarding through a photo.
Yes.
You weren't even watching videos in the early, like, there's so many.
Yeah, you couldn't check those people that were know-it-alls, like,
and now you can just be like,
where, just like, jing,
you have
that info.
Now you have so many, like, avenues to just, like, oh, whatever the fuck you want to know about, you can go find groups of people that are doing that.
Totally.
And unfortunately, there's a bunch of groups of people that are fucking pieces of shit too. Like everything, there's both sides. But I guess where I'm coming at, I think a lot of it is just it's just that representation and being able to feel that you're not alone.
We have the lived experience of hearing our, I don't know about you, but like I knew my great grandparents, and like the slips in terms of like words that they were. Oh yeah. It felt disgusting. Yeah. So if you have that lived experience, and then you're still pushing for that for yourself, like
as you
don't be a hypocrite.
As you age on that, like we identified that with our parents and your older family,
right?
But to think that you're not going to be doing that same fucking thing,
right?
Everything keeps evolving and changing, right? So like, if you were ever able to fucking identify something that made you cringe or whatever the fucking word was when you were a teenager, odds are your generation is still is doing that. It's like it's part of the process, and I enjoy that shit. It's kind of
okay. So one of the things that's really important here for me is that it's not easy. Even when you set the intention to do it right, like a word like tranny, for example, that's just so embedded in what we talk about. Right. I mean, Trans World, the magazine, it was only a year or two ago that I realized, that would be a different magazine today. Okay, for sure. But the thing is, you can feel good about yourself if you set the intention to try, and just like the failures that happen. Just pick yourself up and keep going, right? Like pronouns aren't easy. We grew up with he, she, they, them is difficult at first. And then after a while, you just realize, okay, what information does it give me? If I told you right now that my friend is a guy, right? What information do you have about this person? Absolutely nothing. Right. Like, is he a muscle man? Does he have one leg? Right. Does he like flowers? Yeah. Does he like, monster trucks? You don't know. But we've been taught our whole lives that saying that someone is a man means a certain thing. Right. And that's just not what it means. Like the most manly men have the full spectrum of masculine and feminine qualities in check and have them at the ready. They can be strong, and they can also be very caring. I think that's dope. Yeah. And that's where we're moving towards with language and with like accepting people. It's a spectrum. Human life is a spectrum. Yeah. In every way. So why will we use that limiting language? Yeah. And then some people will say, well, you're using limiting language when you make an event that's just for queer people. You go, no, it's for allies as well, dude. It's like a learning experience for everybody, but mostly it's just a fucking cool thing to go to. Yeah. I'm into that.
Yeah. Now, it starts, and that's where like this year's tour, it's the Space Creators Tour. And so it's a nod to, most of the stuff that comes out of my head has some connection that happened between 1980 and fucking 1995, probably.
I remember when.
But like,
that Space Invaders was the only video game you could play. Yeah. It was a quarter ago. Yeah. And it was hard to get good at. That thing was awesome.
Yeah. And so that was like, oh, this is cool. This has the pop culture reference to the 80s, which is my wheelhouse. But it's like, Space Creators too. And like everything that we've ever done, we've been building. You're building things. It's space creating. Yep. But then also it's like, looking over the last few years where, I think It's Tits was a big start of it. Dope. Where it was like, let's do something for here's a group that getting no fucking help.
Unbelievable.
Or if not, no help, ridiculously weighed scales in other directions.
Second tier help at best.
And so it's like, okay, doing this. And then it's like, okay, that was rad. And then, again, a lot of this was kind of coming out of the climate over the last few years, specifically in the United States. All of a sudden there's, all this backlash, Asian hate during the COVID crisis and whatnot. And my wife's family is from the Philippines. And it again, you would just, when you see how it affects your kids, how it affects your wife, your relatives, it's like, again, there's this aloofness that I've probably had because I wasn't affected for so long. And again, it wasn't like there was anything negative in what I was doing, but it was like I was unaware of some things. Totally. And it was like, so it hits different now. And so to me, it's like if you see it, you fucking own it. And there's a responsibility. And so again, none of this shit's fucking hard. But it was like, okay, let's do it. I was like, man, let's do an event that's an Asian American Pacific Islander community focused event.
Sick.
And it was like, okay, so we started, me and my wife were thinking of the concepts, and then it was like, oh, well, this is what's rad is that Nirvana and AK they have Soy Sauce Nation, which we've had the stickers forever on my wife and my son and my daughter's boards, and I was honorary white rice, next to it, so that felt good. But there's already this community that exists. This is like Holy Boly. There's already something there.
It's already there. Yeah.
So I'm like, let's elevate what they're already doing.
Dope.
They can be the face of this thing.
Yeah.
What I'm good at, what we're good at is all these other things that might not be your thing.
Right.
How do we build, like, again, this is with Duh. Like, we don't know where to start. I'm like, dude, I can do that shit in my sleep.
Yes.
And that's what's amazing on this is being able to, like, oh, this isn't a heavy lift.
Right.
Again, everybody's like, oh, thank you so much. And I feel almost guilty to that fact because it wasn't that fucking hard.
Right.
But it's like the impact it had and how much people fucking care about it is amazing. Dope. And so that's what Soy Sauce Nationals came out of. And that was and that was a first of its kind gathering there.
That's so dope.
And it affected people's lives to this day, and it spawned, Soy Sauce Nation does a stir fry event that kind of came out of that on their own.
That's rad.
And they're doing that. And there's other things that are like, and there's a new Snowboy event in the works that kind of is our next evolution of that concept. And yeah, it's just, again, it's just creating more space. And it's not saying that, at this point, I don't even listen to or recognize any negative comments, people complaining about, where's this or that. And that's just where the delete and block buttons on your accounts are for and whatnot.
Right.
I'm not here to do a big speech or convince you otherwise. Right. If there's and I'm not even saying, but if there's if there's a lead by example, we're just trying to show representation. Yeah. Show that there's room for everybody here. Yeah. And again, these things aren't just, the only Asian riders aren't just at that event. Right. It's like it's part of our whole who we are. But so that was like that next part of Space Creators is like, no, we're also creating safe spaces for everybody. And then, Laura Rogoski's been doing she started We're All Mental and having deep conversations about an array of items, just creating safe spaces where people can just talk about what's going on. And so now that's a part of our events. And like, again, none of this, they all enhance and make everything that we do better. But like, from my perspective, I didn't have to do any, like, my workload isn't any harder. Right. But I was able to be a conduit and to give a platform and a space for somebody that's got all this passion and wants to own it. Yeah. And they can they're the face of that. And like, you're proud of that shit. It's like, it's just cool to be able to see, you know, where something that you just had some involvement on.
Right.
Maybe it would have happened without you.
Right.
Maybe it wouldn't. Maybe something else. But it's like your fingerprints are there somewhere, and you're not. And it's not that you're yelling and going, "Hey, that's where that happened."
Right.
But you know, and the people that know, and it's like, and if that inspires somebody else, and again, that's where all these things, like, you see that this thing inspired this, and then somebody bit that. It's like sampling in, you know, again, of our generation, like fucking hip hop and rap became a thing while we were in our formative years.
Absolutely.
Like, and how much of that is like, oh my God, you could just take, again, you don't have to invent everything. You just take this little piece of this and this piece, and you put them together. You're the first person. You didn't invent either one of these things, but you put them together and you made something brand new.
Yeah.
And so that's where, even on all these things, like even Holy Bully and things like that, it's like, I love seeing where all those things have evolved too.
Right.
And it's like, that's where, you know, it's not proprietary. It goes there. It's not just like, I love seeing other people's versions of it, whether it's done well, whether I'm like, yo, that looks whack, or it's got rake lines. You know, that's just me. But it's like, it's cool seeing what this collective of everybody, and it's not just mine.
Right.
It's ours. And it's like, we're just all place and time being a part of this. But that kind of also gets back to where we left Japan with Bully, was, to me, it's everybody's to kind of like sample and fuck with and do with what they want. But I have a big hang up if it's somebody that's capitalizing off it. Mm-hmm. So if you got a scene and you got a crew and you guys want to do something, that's fucking dope.
Yeah.
Power to you. Hit me up I'll give you any info that you want.
Yeah.
Pointers, I'm down.
Totally.
Because it's the community. It's like, but if all of a sudden a brand is taking something that we did and they're fucking making a lot of fucking money off it, and I'm not, you know what I'm saying? It's like, if there's a hashtag underneath this is different.
Right.
And so that's where I have that hang up on that stuff, is where it's like,
a unique
I'm
person
protective that way.
Yeah.
It's all of ours to use, but if you're fucking cashing out on it and I'm not, fuck you.
Yeah. I met a guy and this is, I don't, so he's not going to listen to this. Maybe he will. He was outside the Save Mart in Tahoe City.
Okay.
And he's got an X Games jacket on that was either the North Face. I think I said, nice Patagonia jacket. He goes, it's not. It's North Face. And it was a giant puffy with like the fur. And it had this huge elaborate X Games patch on the back. And I was like, I think that guy might have bought that at a thrift store. You know what I mean? I wasn't certain. But the swagger that he had, I was kind of like, this guy's somebody.
Right. And
so on the way out, he said like something. And I was like, dude, where'd you get that sick jacket? And he goes, I invented the X Games. And I go, okay, this guy now I'm thinking more along the lines of he got it at a thrift store. But as I talk to him, I'm like, this is the you of X Games. Like, he came up with the idea and he pitched it to some corporate asshole guys that were like, wow, this could make a lot of money. Mm-hmm. And he probably had an 8-year run of like making money off his idea. He sold me his shirt that I left at Blaze Roosevelt's house hung up at his. He's going to be like, what the fuck is this? It's some weird, wild shirt that one day I'll put back out there. But the point being, most people are trying to catch that fire. Like, I have an idea.
Right.
This could make $1 million one day. Like Jake and Tom.
Yeah.
Like, there was like a money driver behind it. But they did also kind of live out of their vans a little bit. You know what I mean? Like, they would go to resorts and sleep in the parking lots. So I think you're this anomaly of passion, privilege, like you've mentioned, but like authenticity and heart and soul. That's like, oh, you see something elevating itself. Like, hey, could we help? Is there something that we could do to bring this into, like to elevate your thing? I know how to throw events.
Right.
How about throwing an event? I know how to get edits done. How about doing an edit? It's just wonderful to hear your story. It's like uplifting and it's not, and it's anti-corporate in the way that we need the anti-corporation thing in order to. But
there's still a balance to it, right? Because you're still in it. Like I remember when I took the job at Snoqualmie, before I'd do all my events from the outside. It's like fuck them, like don't support the man, all that.
Right.
And I was like, oh fuck, am I selling out?
Right.
Doing this thing, taking this job.
Right.
But then it was like, well, maybe if I'm just not on the outside yelling at it, if I'm on the inside and I stay fucking true.
Right.
And if I don't sell it.
There you go.
If I stay true to what I'm about,
right,
maybe I can have more success on the inside. And God damn it, that was the fucking truth.
Yes.
And so, and then it played itself out in a time, and things, again, time and place, and that little window closed, and then you find the next spot. And I'm never, I don't want to be that guy who's complaining about the band that finally fucking went big. You should be able to be rewarded for your passion in your work.
Definitely.
So I want to be able, I'm at a point where I'm able to support myself and my family off of this shit that
Congrats.
I used to do for free. So I'm living a charmed fucking life that way, but and hopefully I can continue to do that and provide, but also it's like keeping yourself in check on that stuff. So it's like as more as I have access to more, the raise all ships,
bring it to the community.
It's like, okay, and it's never ending. It's like, okay, now, well, we got a couple more bucks where it's like, okay, that's cool, and I don't have to stress about Christmas presents maybe this year, like I did the last fucking 20. But but we can also, I can pay that photographer a little bit more. I can bring in this.
That's great.
And do all these things. So it's like, it's not like, as I don't know, it's just being true to yourself on that shit. And again, that's where we're at with the space creators. And I think that could be like this next arm in evolution of Snowboy, even side by side, is that we're to a point where we have enough events that we're hired for and we're doing all right on that I'm like, oh, there's some more weeks. I could do that. And I'm going to invest my time into this. I'm going to give you, I'm going to spend a couple of weeks over the course of the year building this out and putting all the behind the scenes shit. And then I'm going to give a week of my time on site and run this thing and do it just like we do on everything else. But it's like, then all of a sudden this thing happened. And it's like, and it's the stuff that I love to do anyway. And it makes, and if it shines a flashlight on a community or an area or a group of individuals, and then all these things just keep getting radder. So it's like, as long as you're keeping yourself in check and just being true to, you got to look at yourself through that 18, 20-year-old you and be real.
Right. That's true.
Am I still it? Part of the snow is making shit radder today than it was yesterday since 1997. And that was kind of a cool little tagline when it started, but I'm like, at least once a year, I'll try to put a thing just try to look at it from an outsider's perspective. I'm like, is something whack? Whether it's an individual event or all this stuff, it's like, is this still relevant? Is this good? Is this got room to evolve?
Right.
What's, and you just making sure that you're still fucking living up to what you're claiming.
Right. There's two things there that I'd love to address. Number one, there's a bunch of people who listen to the show that probably work for companies for the dollar that they're making, and sometimes can get really bummed out. Oh, fuck, you hear your company's making these money decisions. They're cutting their pro riders. They're cutting some integral, authentic part of the company, and it just feels really bad.
Right.
Well, if you leave, then they got no one. You know what I mean? Like if you really are authentically in your heart, like working for a company that's maybe even on the complete wrong path, you know what I mean? Like you are the person that can turn it around. And if you leave and it leaves nobody, like just eke out that little bit of authenticity and remind people why they go there. And remind yourself by just going snowboarding. That's the big reconnector. You know, a lot of times you get busy with work and you just don't go and do the fucking thing.
Yeah.
And then the second thing is the echo chamber. This is a new development, you know what I mean? That we can curate our feeds to only hear what we want to hear and to only interact with people that have the same belief systems and keep us comfortable, right? Like, so if you're comfortable yelling at people, you can find all sorts of people that are yelling at everybody. Yeah, that guy yelled really good at that guy. And I'm not, hey, look, I listen to that stuff sometimes. Sometimes it just catches my attention and I'm into it. I watch a lot of cops being shitty. I don't know why. That just gets my attention. But the thing for me with the show is that I don't want to exclude anyone for any reason. Like if you want to come on here and talk shit on me or my echo chamber people, like, yeah, let's have the conversation.
Yeah.
Like when Jim Rippey goes into, you know, that I'm, you know, in cahoots with the devil. I'm like, I can hear that from the point of view of a concerned friend, of a person whose belief system leads them to care about me in that way. Thank you. Like, I'll thank you for that. What I do with my life is good. Maybe it won't be a born again Jesus guy.
Right.
But I appreciate the effort that he made in that way. Whereas before, I remember the first time I interviewed him, I was like, I just don't want him to say any of that Jesus shit because I don't want to put it out there because I don't want people to get the wrong idea.
Right.
Look, you're not getting the wrong idea about me.
Right.
That I had him on the show.
Yeah.
He loves that stuff.
Yeah.
He's passionate about it and it's working in his life. So if you can see that and make your way through it and still remember, oh yeah, that's Jim Rippey. I looked up to that guy. That guy rips.
Yeah.
You know, and he's being a nice person in it. You know what I mean? I think you need to expose yourself sometimes to some discomfort, to what the other people that are outside your shit are saying and why they're saying it. And the only way is to kind of open yourself up a little bit more.
Yeah. I'm back in that. It's like, as long as my thing is as long as it's not having ill effect on someone else.
Right.
If you're being true to yourself and things like that, but it doesn't it doesn't have a negative effect on somebody else.
Right.
Power to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? So.
Yeah, that's the filter I try and run my stuff through. But I mean, I'm sure there are people that have watched the show that are just like, I didn't want to hear that.
Oh, yeah.
I don't want to hear about Terrier getting fired because some, you know, woke person is upset, you know? I'm like, okay, you know, I'm trying to get the balance. And the only thing I can do is just be genuinely curious.
Well, that's it. Like it's my take on this.
Yeah.
If you don't like the take, that's cool.
Yeah.
Go. You can do just what I did. Like I've navigated this through my site.
Yes.
And I'm very proud and happy with what it's done, and I'm very stoked on where it's going.
Right.
But it's not for everybody, and
right.
Trying to learn to not take that personal and stuff like that. It's like it's all right.
Yeah.
And so so that's my whole thing. I'm like it's not an agenda. It's not anything like that.
Right.
This is where I am as a person.
Yeah.
And here's a lot of the people that we surround ourselves. This is this community, and we're just fucking going about. And it's fucking snowboarding.
It's rad.
We're just playing outside.
It's rad to really meet these people like a Jess that are, you know, pioneering a new way of thinking, and then listen. That's dope for me. Like I wouldn't have got that perspective if I was just working my dumb job and snowboarding on the weekends, and you know, like listening and paying attention is like, oh my God, it's just, that is the key to experiences in life.
Yeah.
Hey man, maybe you like the same chocolate cake every Friday at the same restaurant and taking the same vacation every year. That's rad too. That's super cool. And if you could do something good in that life within your routine, that's even better. It's great. It takes all kinds. I love everybody. I'd love the show.
Yeah.
It's an experience that's opened up the world to me. And I see a parallel in what happened with you taking on creating events. I've seen you in action at an event. Hundreds of people, everybody's staring at you. You're doing the speech, you're opening it up. You're trying to
doing weird things with my hands.
You're trying to share with this group what the vision is and why it's happening.
In a condensed amount of time.
And the admiration that's in the crowd at that point, the number of people on their phones are going, I want to get this moment. This is the moment. The whole fucking thing is the moment. It's awesome. What you've done is admirable. And just like I said, that FOMO, seeing it from the outside and then being in it and hearing other people, oh man, I wish I could have been there. I'm like, make it a part of your life to get to these events when they are in your area or when they're somewhere that you can get to. That's dope.
And well, that's what's kind of cool in that too. Just again, diversifying it, taking it. It's like it's a tour shirt, you know. It's like it's that's what it like. And there's different shows at different towns and shit like that. And so it's like people be like, oh, I can't wait. I want to get to Holy Bully sometime. I'm like, well, you know, a lot of people do. That's again a good problem to have on my end. But you know, that's where we have these other things where it's like you might not get to Bully, or you might not. It might take you a couple of years or something like that.
Sure.
But along the way, like, there's room for this and get you into this. Like and then you know, people kind of work up through the things. And what's kind of cool is sometimes you build an event that's like the Village series with SRD up at Sunshine. That was just going to be, you know, at the time in between the rotation of Holy Bully. And it's like, oh, we'll just do this for the off years. At the time, it was a 3-year, like it would be every 3 years it would come back to Sunshine. And all of a sudden that's become like a thing. And I know there's kids that go to that event who could give 2 fucks about Bully.
Right.
The Village speaks to them.
That's
and like
dope.
that's rad as shit. Like again, because I'm like, here's a fucking buffet, right? Here's all these things.
That's it.
What's your taste?
Yeah.
And maybe it's a different taste every time or year or whatever, but it's like, again, just trying not to like not pigeonhole, not define everything. Like keep the more rules and structure you put into everything, the less chances it has to keep evolving, and changing and whatnot. You know,
you've done such a great job at these events, and there's a component we really haven't talked about, which is the visual component of it and the documenting of it too. Like you have a holistic approach to these events. That's like, you know, use the right hashtags, please. You know, and we do have a responsibility.
There's no W in holy.
Howly bowly. It's its own hashtag too.
Oh, it's got like 500. It's got a lot of views.
Yes.
Anyway, tags. Yeah.
It's got a lot of tags. Howly bowly.
But also on those things, those are, again, it's like it's the constant evolution of how what we're doing can still be a thing. Like it costs money to do this shit. It does things like that. There's, you know, children to feed, stuff like that.
Yes.
And so it's seeing what the landscape is always like, you know. It's like before you started, you get a video part on a DVD, and there'd be a story in a magazine.
Right.
Okay, that was rad, place and time. And then that wasn't a thing anymore.
Right.
And then it was online and stuff. So it was like, so just always having to keep kind of changing. You know, we started like there's a video component to every event that we do.
That's dope.
And it wasn't I wanted really bad to pay for video production and have another thing on my list, but it was like some of the magazines at the time, the model that they had and the funds that they had available, they were able to come up and cover these events, and had a video guy, and there was a video guy and a photographer and like the whole squad crew. Yeah. It was dope. Yeah. Again, but then like that isn't a thing anymore. And then it got to a point of where with we started making at the projects, it was like, okay, we're going to make our own edit. Cause the idea of that was that the edit's going to come out. So it bugged me that the edit would come out so long after that it had no relevance anymore.
Got it.
So the idea is born at the projects and then ended up being part of every event that we do now was that especially Instagram was very new at the time. It was like, let's put this stuff out on Instagram and Facebook as it's happening in real time.
Right.
And then put out a video. At the time, it was on Monday. So 3 days later, a video drops.
Yeah.
And so that was a whole new thing. Like, nobody was like you didn't want to show anybody the clip yet. Things like that. It's like,
yeah, man.
The guy who's doing the edits, like John Stark's doing the edit for the first one, and he's picturing his project because he's fantastic at putting these videos and these movies together.
Yeah.
And these visions. But he's sitting here filming what ends up being the ender of Jesse Paul at Loon Mountain at the Loon Project. And behind him, Scott Stevens is eating a fucking cookie with his fucking phone out, getting a phone clip and putting it immediately up.
Right.
And it gets like Travis Rice fucking following on Facebook. Like,
but
also letting everybody, like, this is like the people that are consuming this over here aren't necessarily the same people that are going to watch it over here on the video. And so it's okay. And like, just again, it's just starting that evolution. It's like, how does real time and that video, but making that video land when it's still on somebody's mind,
right?
And like creating this comment out of something where it makes a big deal,
of course.
And then learning how to, like, again, with hashtags, things like that, where things can live and be accessed later.
Right.
Like, that's the biggest thing on some of this stuff, where it's like, I really always stoked where, when I started pitching events to sponsors, they would be like, oh, you want how much money for something that's over in 24 or 48 hours?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And again, every time I was told no, I tried to gain something from that. Like, why?
Yes.
Why are you saying no? Or what made them say no? And then you fucking tweak it and come back, and then you just get told no another 30 fucking times. Just seeing what everybody's looking for on that. And so much of that was that people were thinking of it as like a contest.
Right.
So to me, a contest is only its value as an asset or coverage is only valuable for a very finite amount of time.
Yes. And then it doesn't age that well.
No.
Right.
And it's like, but what we create, because we've taken out, nobody's wearing bibs, there's no heats, and we're not doing all this shit. We've taken all that shit out.
Yeah.
And what we try to pride ourselves on is making very unique looking features that just visually look rad.
Yeah.
We'll be doing a Holy Bully build at fucking Mammoth before, and I was on the sideline on the fence side, and I didn't get anything done for half a day because all these just random, skiers, snowboarders nobody even rides a half pipe, but they would just stop and be, oh my God, what is it? This looks beautiful. It aesthetically appealing.
Right.
And so I'm like, okay. But then you get really good photographers and filmers and ridiculously creative and talented riders. I'm like,
right.
You can drop a fucking photo from any fucking one of, like, from almost any one of our events. You could drop it now and get as much, it's just as relevant as it was 10 years ago.
Exactly.
So to me, like, that took that no out of that marketing guy.
Right.
He had to come up with a new no.
Right.
And they always do. But it was like, all right, so now this is a story. Like Holy Bully, especially a lot of times, brands don't want to do events late into the spring because the selling season's over.
Right.
I'm like, yeah, it makes a ridiculously huge social media impact during this 2-week window, but then all these edits drop all summer. And then all the brands that are affiliated with it start dropping their coverage of it in the fall. With that, like, to me, it's everything. It's a year-round story that you're getting into.
Yeah, if you could be in one of those meetings with, a park director who's talking with a operations manager who's just having a hard time explaining what it means to be affiliated with a Snowboy event. Like, if some guy out there is on the fence and needs that little pep talk to just be like, oh, what's the elevator pitch for a Snowboy event at a mountain?
Yeah, well, we have that, and a lot of resorts will reach out, and we'll send them the deck and kind of explain it. And again, most of the time, it won't make sense to the folks there. But then there's resorts that it makes sense, and we fire it off. But it's like, I guess it's like, to me, events, when I was at Mervyn, I would look at it. To me, events is where it's the middle of a Venn diagram, where so many things intersect. So again, I'm very lucky, I think, that I've been able to be just like the snowboard bum on the outside. I spent a decade at a resort. I spent 4 years in a manufacturer. I've been around shops my whole life. I work with a ton of amazing photographers and filmers, and technically I'm like a curator of media in there. So always just trying to look at it from what makes everybody's job a little easier. And so when I was at Mervyn on that, again, trying to justify why I wanted more money to make more events next year, it was like, this is the one spot where everybody can hang out. Like, you can, here's the product, here's the team, here's retailers, here's the public, here's media. When do they all fucking hang out? Events.
Right.
And that's where you like, and to me, then also the event is, to me, it's an entity. It's not just like a date on a calendar. Like, every one of these things has a personality. It has, here's what the logo looks like. Here's what the idea is behind, like, every one of these is like almost a living, breathing thing. And if you look at it that way, I think that's what you gotta, get yourself to, where you're giving it what its potential can be, instead of just being like, oh fuck, it's a little fucking skateboard contest.
Sure.
That some kids are gonna win a deck or something. But if you're presenting it that way, then you're like, what do you want it to be?
Right.
I'm like, you can do any fucking thing with this thing. So it's like, what we try to show is like, we can we'll create up a concept with you and try to build it out of what's already happening, what the culture of your resort, what your area, maybe it's a crew, maybe it's, whatever. We'll find something that is specific to your zone and what you do. And we're just going to build off of that. So again, there's the seed, there's the Easter egg that somebody can find later.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, we build this thing like Ash and Steel, for example, in Corinthia. Rob and Rory at the time that were running the park there. They came out. They had followed us. They were fans of what we did. They hit me up DMs and were like, could we come up to Holy Bowling and help on the build? And I'm like, okay. At this time, like, people weren't. Now that happens a lot.
Yes.
Back then it wasn't as much. And they're like, oh, we run this park and we do this. And I'm like, all right, fuck it. Okay. And they show up and they're amazing fucking workers. And like, they're like, oh, you are me. You're like a young me from Vermont. Okay. Dope. Yeah. But in part of it is like, they wanted to eventually get a Snowboy event at their gig. And so we started having the conversations while building and stuff. It's a good place to actually be talking about that shit. And so, when the resort then was like down to invest in create something together, it was like, okay, what do you get? Like, Rob at the time made all these wood jibs out of these Vermont hardwood. Brad. He's a craftsman, like skinning, seasoning, all that stuff, all the oil, like, and just making rad shit. And so Rob was making all this wood stuff. And then Rory's he's the metal fabricator.
Rad.
So I'm like, these guys are cartoons in my, like, there's characters or Avatar, right? Like, it's firebenders and waterbenders or whatever. Like, but this is fucking cool. And it was like, and so it's like, oh, and I asked them, was like, what kind of wood is that? And they're like, they're ash. These are ash trees. And I'm like,
killer. And
I'm like, I came up with ash and steel. And I'm like, to me, it sounded like, it just sounded badass. But then like, so I'm pitching this idea and I'm like, we don't even know what it is yet. And we do a site visit and we were cruising around looking for areas. And like, all of a sudden there's this little football shaped patch of trees. I believe it's a Prospector Park or Run. And all of a sudden I'm like looking at this little isolated spot, this little zone with all these hardwoods into it. And I was like, whoa, what if we just build like volcanoes and transitions all through this stuff?
Sick.
We just magically poured snow that froze in place, and you would just ride through this hectic lines. It's like, and then so like that was Ash and Steel, and then all of a sudden we dropped I remember we dropped the photo from the first day of that, and like Tim Zimmerman's like, oh my god, and that's about the biggest flattery in the world. On that. Like it aesthetically again just looks so fucking sick. So it's like that's just one example of what you can do. But it's like you got to be able to. But from a resort standpoint, you got to fucking get behind it, and it's going to cost some money,
right?
And you might and it's going to take a couple of years for that to resonate. Like
totally,
Bowley hit its stride maybe year 4 or 5, maybe 6.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's saturated into like public awareness of it. Like I remember when we started the public part of it, and the resort didn't want anything to do with that. Like, oh my God, that's chaotic. We don't need that. But now it's like they're seeing that people are planning their vacations on the public weekend.
That's dope.
They're traveling from all over the goddamn world to come ride for 2 days when it's open to the public.
So yeah, I think one of the things that a lot of people in the industry, if you get caught up in the money thing, you're selling as many tickets as you can. The lift lines are too long, but this is a long-term plan. Lift lines get shorter. This stuff falls off of, like it comes in waves, and this is a really big wave. But if you want longevity in the space, you probably want authenticity in what you're offering for. Bowley's not just for the people that ride it. Like if you have a pass at Banff and you're at work, you're like, geez, the kids this weekend up there, they were doing all these wave things. It was really cool. Like everybody feels like, there's something special going on at the place that I buy my pass.
Yeah.
There's something cool to Sunshine. Like if you're going to Banff, where are we going to go? Well, of course we're going to go to Sunshine. Like I've seen all those Bowley shots there. It must be epic up there.
Right.
Yeah. So it's a little bit more than just dollars and cents. It's like investing in I don't want to even say it's investing in the coolness of your area. Just investing in the authenticity, like that you get it. You guys get it. You're not putting on a Toyota Presents Big Mac, Big Air or whatever. Like that's a whole other vibe. Yes, you can spend money doing that if you want, but you're going to get a different return on investment on a big corporate contest or a fist run thing.
Well, we have a thing that's like, if you don't get it, you don't get it.
Yeah.
Like you don't get the event.
Yeah.
Because the hardest part for me is like trying to convince somebody that I have a decent idea.
Yeah.
I've been doing that a long fucking time, and I'm just tired of that.
Yeah.
So it's like there's a lot of bucket lists, little checklists of places that I would be cool to do this or that.
Oh yeah.
But I'm like, I'm going to go with the places that it's like we can do rad shit, and they recognize that we do quality, and I recognize that they're quality. Yeah. And together we can just do even cooler shit. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And to your comment on the waves of things, it's like, since COVID, like resorts have no problem fucking filling up their parking lot at that point. And
totally.
And I have a lot, that's been a conversation all the time. Like, we're at capacity. Why would we want to fucking do another event? Because we don't want more people here.
Right.
It's like, well, again, like to your point, there is a long vision. Like to assume that the amount of visits that we're getting right now is going to be the new normal for the next decade. I think you're foolish if you think anything's going to stay the same for more than a year or two.
Right.
Could it? Potentially.
Sure.
But like putting all your eggs in one basket and be like, this is our fucking lane now?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, good luck to you. I hope you succeed. Right. But it's like, to me, again, it's like, it goes back to that Snoqualmie shit. I'm like, I want people taking pride in my shit. I want that sticker. I created that Snoqualmie skull sticker long fucking time ago. The last thing any fucking resort was wanting to do was put a skull for their terrain park. As a marketing piece.
Right.
You know, but like that was a thing, and it's still a thing. They've changed it or whatever, but it's still out there. Like, it's creating pride And also with that comes retention.
Yes.
So to me, it's like you can chase a new customer. Getting a new customer is great.
Yeah.
But you already got this one.
Yeah.
So if you fucking spend all your time and efforts chasing that one and you lost that one,
yeah,
or you lost 5 chasing that one,
yeah,
you're a fucking idiot.
Yeah.
So it's like, to me, you have both sides of that. It's not just black and white. There's not just one answer. Is a Snowboy event the answer to all of your terrain parks and your marketing? No.
Yeah,
is it a piece of the fucking toolbox? It could be.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And to your point on people, like the community talking about it, things like that. The best case on that I had was, what was it, 2019, the first time we did Bully Down Under. So my buddy Ruben Cameron, who's built some of the, he's an operator for a long time. Basically anything rad that's happened in Australia over the last fucking 20 years probably had Ruben's fingerprints on it.
Nice.
He was at Threadbow at the time, and we started having conversations about doing, a holy bully in Australia and call it Bully Down Under. And so, and then again, kudos to Ruben on it. He came out while we were doing, he's an operator, but he came out when we were doing Holy Bully their second year. The last year we did a Mammoth, spring of 2019, and he spent a whole week on his dime just working on the hand tool side, the hand jobs,
Rad.
Quality hand jobs with me and my crew, and then got a good working relationship with us. Anyway, then September we're at Threadbow doing that, and it was ridiculous. Like the local town, Jindabyne, down the road where you get groceries and where the shops are and some restaurants and shit, like half the restaurants knew who like Snowboy was, or that this thing was happening at least, or these guys with these accents, not like ours.
Yeah.
There's this thing like the bus driver in Threadbow knew what's going on. Every fucking bar knew what was going on that week. And it was like, that was fucking cool. Like, and it wasn't like, oh, here we are. Like, but it was just like, wow, that people cared. They saw that it was there, and they saw the value in it. And that we were bringing something of value and substance to their zone, and they appreciated it. And they were stoked to show off that. How stoked were they that it happened there? Yeah. And not at Perisher, which is right down the street.
Sure.
And that's not a slam on any, but it was like, like that's what, there's that
if you know, you know.
Yeah.
Like, that's it. If you know, you know.
Yeah. So.
And the people that want to go to your events are, like, in my friend groups, are the people that are, like, the most passionate about snowboarding. Like, that's it. That's what it comes down to. So if you catch the kids who are coming up that see this thing and say, oh, can we ride this? And their parents go, yeah, we'll come back Saturday and ride the public thing. Like, you're supporting that next generation. People that want to go to it. It's, man, it's just such a fun thing.
And what Bully is really, again, it wasn't the intention starting on it, but what's been really cool about it is that it's just, there's a relatable element to it.
Yes.
Where it's like, you can go through it, and like you said, like Fridge can be doing some fucking ridiculous thing on the big fucking Kano, and that I'm never gonna fucking do.
Right.
But I took up until 8 feet up the transition, we took the same line.
Yeah,
and then I did a little weak slash off the side, but it's like everybody can pick, as long as you're an intermediate leveled rider, you can go through there and have a blast.
Totally.
But you can also, like, to me, that's what's lost in some of the bigger, like, super pipe and slope style things where it's like, I remember what my son, like our son was watching like maybe like the first Olympics or an X Games or something that he remembered in his era. And it was like, there wasn't that, oh, I want to do that.
Right.
Because it stunts. It's there's constant, you can't just picture yourself going 25 feet out of a 25-foot fucking pipe or something.
Yeah.
And that's no knock on any of the people that put those events on, that participate. No. It's fucking amazing.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's not really a relatable experience on a snowboard for a lot of people.
Right.
But holy boly, it looks fucking bananas. It looks otherworldly.
Yes.
So it's unique in that aspect. And there's no... like, it's whatever you want to do with it. It's not linear snowboarding. I came out of linear snowboarding. I respect what I learned from linear snowboarding, but I don't want to fucking do it anymore because there's a lot of really good people doing that product already.
Yeah.
They don't need another fucking person in there telling them what to do. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to go over here and fuck around with this.
Yeah.
And so that's what's cool about that. And it's like, it's for everybody. It can be for all those things. And again, that wasn't the goal. We were just making shit. I wanted to make something that looked like this so this guy could do that thing on it. And that happened. But then I'm like, oh shit, this is actually really cool for everybody. So,
yeah, it's beautiful.
So that shit's been fun. But again, it's just so much of this comes down to just that, like you're saying, it's just getting people to believe in an idea on things like that. I mean, when we decided to come to the States with Bowley, so again, I haven't been on Facebook in so long, but like so many of these early references come from that. But I got like a Facebook message from a buddy who was working, George, that was working at Jason George, who was working at Copper while we were doing the second Bowley, and his message was like, God, that looked really cool. If you ever want to do that in the States, you should let me know. Yeah. And to me, it was like, oh, this is supposed to happen. Like,
yes.
So I gave him, he was the first person that said anything. So I followed up. I was at Super Park at Bachelor with him. I'm like, yo, Jason, that thing you said. And like, if you go way back in our Instagram feed, there's a picture of me and Jason standing at Mount Bachelor side by side. I think I got a Sonics headband on and some shit. But like, that's what that conversation was. That was the first U.S. Bowley, and it was going to come to Copper. And so we went out there and we did the site visits and did all this stuff, and it was like we were ready to roll. And then at the time, Monster was still affiliated because they helped launch the whole thing, but they were a Red Bull event host resort or something, and the vice president of marketing just didn't see the value in, like, he didn't want to bum out the Red Bull local Red Bull rep, I think.
Yeah, sure. And
that's your prerogative, but he didn't see the value on that me and Jason were so passionate about.
Right.
So then that didn't happen. So I'm like, so then we're like, okay, well, that sucks. The clock's ticking. Started talking with my buddy Mike Batera, who was, when I was at Snoqualmie, he was running all the Booth Creek resorts out in New Hampshire and stuff. He's an SPT. Now he runs his amazing dude. But I was like, oh, what about Squaw at the time? What about Palisades?
Yeah.
And so we were going to do it there. That was the second place. But then that year, the Tahoe didn't get any snow. So there's no fucking snow in Tahoe. And it's like, now we're in the beginning of January, I think. So the clock's really fucking ticking now.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh fuck. Where are we going to, like, there's no snow on the West Coast. Where are we going to do this event? So I'm scrambling around, and I just was like, okay, well, Park City. What about, at the time they were fucking doing everything. I have no idea any of the people there, stuff like that. But I'm at Mervyn. I asked Barrett, and Barrett's like, oh, Jason Cooper. I work with Coop. And so I cold call him. He's working on the fucking Trans Am build or something like that.
Yeah.
It's like, hello? And I'm like, hey, here. He knew of the event and stuff. So we talked for about an hour and things like that. Start getting the ball rolling. And like, he's a dude that just gets shit done, which was helpful. And then it was funny, like, I get off the phone and I got a message from Mike Batera because the Palisades thing fell through. But he's like, would you think about Seven Springs in Pennsylvania, in Western Pennsylvania?
Wow.
And I'm like, again, because they were really killing it on all the Super Park stuff, like those big monolith structures.
Yes.
Like, not Bowley style whatsoever, but just fantastic snow sculptures. Beautiful work. And, but I was like, okay, I just need a spot, right?
Yeah.
And so I called Mike back, and I'm like, tell you what, I just had a pretty good conversation with Coop at Park City, And if that falls through, I need a spot by like this weekend.
Oh, wow.
I'm going to call you back and we'll go with Seven Springs if I don't have a yes by this.
Oh, wow.
And so it was like that close to happening in mid-Atlantic U.S. too.
Amazing.
So then Cooper hits me back. He's like, we're in. And we fucking went out there. It was amazing. What's cool there is like it doubled the size from, so like the first bowlie tripled in size, the second bowlie.
Yeah.
Tripled inside to the third bowlie. And that's really small if you look at it now. But like,
sure.
Again, but that was like first time, okay, I want to see if I have 3 cats out here, what I can do instead of just one operator. And so that worked. And then after that, it's like, okay, we've done Japan. We're in the States. We're going to Europe.
Nice.
That was the idea. And so it was like, again, through Mervin, because at the time, this is LibTech's event and whatnot.
Yeah.
And it just happened to be that Freddie Kalbermotten is the Swiss knife fucking rides for LibTech.
That's awesome.
And so we get talking about some stuff, and he lives in Saas Fee, and the family's been there for generations. Anyway, Freddie and the family, big influence in Saas Fee, in that whole valley. And so we started pitching. The idea was that we would do it in the summer up on the glacier.
Yeah.
Like, oh, this would be cool. Because one thing about Bowley that's always been rad was like we were able to put it farther into the spring when everybody's done. The contest guys are done. The street guys are done filming. Even depending on how warm it got in Alaska, you can even get some of the AK guys down.
Right.
Not every year and stuff, but what I love, it's like, to me, it's like the celebratory gathering at the end of the year where it's such an eclectic group. You're never going to see that many people, that many riders from that many like little niches of snowboarding, and then across those generations.
Right.
Because you can ride, there isn't like, because it's not a 70, 80 foot jump.
Right.
You can still ride this like,
hell yeah, the kids are there.
as long as you can still ride. So you got
there.
you've got that whole back to the Holy Holy Revival. You've got that whole past, present, and future. There it was on a 25-foot quarter pipe, and we were just honoring the people.
Yes.
Now we're actually all riding together.
Yeah,
and that's fucking dope.
That's insane.
And we're working on Bowley 4.
Yeah.
And the idea, again, was like, oh, it's worked in Japan. It worked in the United States. Let's go to Europe. It's the next thing. We're in with Freddie. We're going to fucking do this. So we came over. We did a site visit, all that. There's a great spot for it. We met with the departments and whatnot, but it just wasn't something the resort was into. It's like the amount of... And we haven't had any luck. We've had other conversations about trying to do like Euro Bowley or something like that. And it just... From the resorts that we've at least talked to, and I'm not trying to generalize everything, but who I've had conversations with, it's still such a ski-centric area.
Yeah, I've never shredded there.
Haven't seen the value in what we're doing on there. And again, there's a lot of places in the U.S. that don't either, so it's not just we haven't found the right home. We haven't found the right person that gets it, that has the resources, things like that. So that year, actually, there was no Bowley. So it was like, oh, fuck. So we had no Bowley that year. I want to say that was 2015.
Sure.
Something like that. Anyway, so following Park City, and what's funny on Park City too, Bowley was closing week. So the last public day is on Sunday. That's the last day before Vail bought Park City.
Oh, wow.
So Holy Bowley shut down the I Ride Park City era.
Oh, wow.
By it, again, just happened to be.
Yeah.
And with that, Coop and I got along so well, we started kicking around the ideas to have the very first like year-round Bowley Park.
Sick.
Which nobody had done in North America.
Right.
Bubbles is starting to do that with the Frozen Wave Park in Hoppo at the time.
Yeah.
But nobody's doing that in North America. And so we were the names, we were putting contracts together. It was happening. And then all of a sudden we get this Vail announcement, And then the whole thing, like within a year, Coop's job is eliminated.
Yeah.
And it just changed. It's not the Vail's focus. And then, but I'd spent so much time going, okay, it'll work in this region because A, B, and C, things like that. So I believed in that so much that I was talking to my buddy Josh Jorgensen. He's the GM at Mission Ridge. He used to be the food and beverage manager when I was at Snoqualmie.
Oh, wow.
So we had a rapport, and we talked about doing, and we created this thing called the Bomber Bowl Park.
Yeah.
So there's all the Mission Ridge is all about this the Bomber Bowl and stuff. So I believe around World War II or something like that, the World War II era aircraft bomber type of thing crashes into the resort.
Oh shit!
There's still a wing like that you can touch and ride by and touch. Yeah. So there's all this aspect, and it's right below that is this zone. So it's like, oh, it's Bomber Bowl. It's the Bomber Bowl Park. So like, there's the name, all that. Dope. And so, so for 2 years we did this again on this place that's off that a lot of people hadn't heard of. Didn't have this huge park reputation, things like that. But I was like, if we can show that you can do it here, you could do it fucking just about anywhere.
Yeah.
And so for 2 years, the Bomber Bowl Park was a thing, which was open from like January to March. And again, like all that work wasn't wasted that me and Coop did. Right. We got to do that fucking thing.
Right. Again,
it's not if, it's when. Like,
yeah.
If the idea is we're going to fucking do it.
Yeah.
You just won't do it with you.
Right.
And so and so yeah, so that worked out. So obviously we don't go back to PC. That park doesn't happen. We don't go to Europe, and it's like, oh fuck, like the momentum is feeling like the momentum's gone. But then it's like, well, either the momentum's gone or it's fucking building because nobody had it.
Right.
Everybody's getting hungry again because it's gone. Like the band, it's like a reunion tour or something like that.
Totally.
And so we started talking with Mammoth and I was told no 3 times from TJ at Mammoth, but we were persistent and kept coming back and it worked out. And that first one,
really good fit.
It worked out so good that first time. Like it, it was again, and we tripled the size again, the scale of all this. This is when Bowley's still just ridiculous visual changes year to year.
Yeah.
And so it tripled the size of Park City, and to the point of like we bit off so much more real estate than we could chew.
Yeah.
It was like there's this giant cradle. There was all these different. It was bananas. But we're running 14, 16-hour days the last few days. We're finishing this one zone, which ended up being that Chris Bradshaw got an air over these boobs, which was a cover of I believe a free run in Japan. We built that by cat light.
Oh wow!
At like 2:00 in the morning the night before. Like,
unbelievable.
So it was this whole new thing, and the size and the scale was epic. But as I was looking at it, it was like, and people were like, oh, how are you ever going to top this? But I was like, there were gaps in it. There were little zones where maybe there was like we didn't get to that zone because we built it in sections, right? And so all the sections didn't necessarily. We ran out of time for the meetup, and some of that too was all at this point like we need more. There's more hand finishing. And that's one of the things that separates Snowboy is the finish work on things. Yeah. So it's like, it's cats and excavators and hand crew, but what makes our finished product stand out is the quality hand jobs. Yeah. And that's that hand crew. And so up until then, it was like me and my friend Neil, was at Snowboy from Jump. It was like the two of us. And I always had this assumption that every terrain park, their day crew, their hand crew, was on these same comparable levels. Sure. And whatnot. And you'd go to these different resorts, and I think a lot of it's testimonial to how good the operators, how good the groomers were. Yep. That they didn't really need to do much. They show up and they just finish like a takeoff or a jump. Totally. But again, nobody's building the type of features that we do, so nobody knows how to finish those things, how to approach it. But in my head, I'm just like, oh, everybody, like I'm not special. Sure. Like everybody's got this. but that's where it was like, oh shit, we need to bring in more bodies. Like I have to assemble fucking Wu-Tang to get this thing done.
Yeah, man.
And so that's kind of like where at Mammoth, that's kind of like the start that ended up being, you know, the Quality Handjobs crew, that extended Snowboy crew. It eventually leads to us creating our own rake line, tool line, all that.
Yeah.
Creating these digger edits, the Pursuit of Constant Radness volumes 0 through 2 edits.
Nice.
And just creating this more like this digger, celebratory digger culture too, which is kind of happening again all at the same times.
Yeah. Yeah, man.
Yeah, which is dope. So Bully's back. We just did Mammoth for the first time, and we've blown minds for its scale, and so then it's like fucking Canada.
Nice.
We're going to Canada, and that's the next step. And in my head, I'm like, I know how everybody's like, how do you up the Mammoth build? I was like, we're gonna build this fucker from top to bottom, so there's not those gaps.
Yeah.
Like it's like that's what's going to be the difference. And so anyway, we're working with. Here's another Vail story. So at the time, again, Monster's still a part of the event, and so it's like, oh well, let's lean on, you know, if we teamed up at a Monster resort, that's even better for one of these sponsors.
Right.
So that's fantastic. Play to your strengths. And so we started talking with Whistler. And it's like, which was, you know, they held grenade games and all that shit.
Hell yeah.
You know, their list is fucking legit.
Yeah.
And so we started talking about that and talking to everybody, and everybody's down, and we're working it all together. And then again, in the like late summer or something like that, my wife, she's like, smiles, is like, hey, did you see this press release? And it's like, Vail just purchased Whistler Blackcomb. I was like,
oh my God.
Oh, really? And like literally all of a sudden, like silence.
Yeah. No
and so
talk.
this is like late fall or like early fall, something like that. And I'm hitting everybody back, and they're like, just nobody's saying no, but nobody's saying yes. And then finally it gets into December, and it's like, no, I think the reasoning was that they wanted to be able to open up. They wanted to open up the mountain bike courses earlier.
Yes, yeah.
And
Whistler does that.
You know,
right,
and so that's where that extra. That's where the focus was, and I can totally get that. It was disappointing.
Yeah,
it would have been a fucking fantastic fit.
Would have been a hell of an
But
event.
it's what it is. But again, it was in this lurch, so I'm like, fuck. Every time, like, this event is so proven in my head. Again, it's just starting to make ripples within the industry, but in my head, it's fucking big deal, right?
Yeah, you've been going
perspective,
at it,
right?
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh shit, what do we do? I got to do Canada. And it's like, and then at the time we were still doing the downtown throwdowns, these big urban rail scaffolding jib structures events, and we did a series of amateur qualifiers for these things called the feeders. Okay. So one of the feeders we do for the Seattle Downtown Throwdown is in Spokane Valley Mall. Out in the parking lot outside of Zoomies, which Zoomies was the sponsor of the whole thing.
Holy shit.
We've got this janky scaffolding set up. Like, this was sketch. But the other ones, it evolved and was really, really cool, and I'm proud of it. But that first year of the feeders was minimal. But anyway, so we're lining this up, and it's all these regional riders. So at that one, Yeager Bailey shows up. That's the first time he crosses into our world. So like, he's there because he's riding at 49 degrees north, which is like right near where I grew up. And I was like, and he's just destroying. He's a big Think Tank fan, and Jeno and Bertner are there, and like, there's a lot of cool stuff happening, and a lot of cool people that were there. I geek out looking at not only the throwdown lineups, but the feeder qualifiers. It's like, it's so many people that went on to just be such prolific snowboarders or industry heads. It's awesome. But one of the people that was there was Kendra Scurfield. And so Kendra is, she's going to Gonzaga University at the time, which is in Spokane. Also snowboards. I don't know. We hadn't met. Anyway, she's at this event. And so her family owns Sunshine Village.
No way.
And so earlier at the downtown throwdown also moved around. It was in Seattle. It went to San Francisco. It went to Minneapolis. It went to Boston. 9 years we did that. Year 10, it was going to Calgary.
Wow.
We did the site visit. We did the city planning. Like, it was happening. And then the economy blew up. The oil industry specifically for that area fell out. And all of a sudden that event took a lot of fucking money.
Yeah.
To create
a
mountain in the middle of your city, right?
Right.
So, but I had been talking with Kendra because Sunshine Village was going to be part of the Calgary Downtown Throwdown.
Oh, sick.
So that's how I've re-engaged with Kendra and got her contact info.
Yeah.
So now it's fucking 3 days before Christmas, and I just found out that Whistler isn't going to host our thing.
Wow.
And I got to fucking come up with, again, like, what do I do? So I cold call Kendra out of the blue in the middle of the height of their season, all that. And I was like, God, this is the worst timing to reach out to somebody. Anyway, call her up. She's intrigued. I book a flight. They give me a room. I fucking fly there. I show up. They give me lodging on hill.
Nice.
Like, if you've been to Sunshine, it's absolutely gorgeous. Walk into this on mountain hotel and right in the middle of the village. They check me into. They comp me a room. I'm walking down. I sit there. I'm looking around, watching Much Music or some bullshit, and all of a sudden there's a knock on the door, and somebody shows up. And there's a bottle of wine and a fucking cheese and fucking fruit tray.
What?
I've never had pseudo red carpet rolled out at a resort.
Yeah.
And I've been doing it a long time at this point.
Yeah.
And it was like, whoa, this is different. And so that's where, and so we went and we scoped the spot and had a quick conversation, and it was fucking set. And so like all that panic, all that over the course of like 8 days during the holidays, all of a sudden we're good.
Oh my God.
That's where we get to team up with Arena. So Steve and Lucas come into the fold.
Nice.
Team up there. The build was bananas. We got the cover of Ski Area magazine.
Yeah.
Like, that's where it started to really kind of saturate into like just more consciousness within the resort world, things like that.
Yeah.
And that was fucking dope.
So is that year 5? That's like halfway in?
Yeah. I want to say that was 2017.
Yeah. So, and then do you kind of like bid farewell to them, or was there like, hey, we should do this again sometime?
Well, at that point, it's like, okay, this one works great. This is going to be this rotation. So at that point, it was going to be like, Europe wasn't really a thing that sounded realistic.
Yeah.
So at that point, instead of being Japan, Europe, US, it was US, Canada, Japan.
Yeah,
was
that makes
the
sense.
idea.
Sure.
And on that. And so, so that was the new idea there. So it was like, okay, we'll be back in 3 years.
Right.
We didn't know fucking COVID was coming, but
right.
We'll see in 3 years. And then to our earlier point, that's where in the meantime, they're like, oh, what do we do in the meantime? This is amazing. So we created the Village with SRD to be the off-year event. Yeah. Which has grown to this will be year 5 for the Village.
Jeez.
Which is fucking rad.
Yeah, that's so rad.
And so that happened, and then the next one, so then we were supposed to go back to Japan. So this is year 20. This is Snowboy's 20th anniversary. We did a gallery, all this stuff. And it was like, okay, here's what's coming next. And the idea was to go back to Japan. There's a few resorts. I'm blanking on the names, but there are resorts that are closed all winter because they're just inaccessible. They get so much snow.
Oh, damn.
And you've seen, like, I'm sure you've seen like these pictures of, you know, these walls cut out 30 feet wide. And that's like in April. But again, it's a completely different market to what their client is.
Sure.
But they're places that open late in the season to when Bowley now lives late in the season. And so talking with Kenji again, and he went up and did all this legwork and was talking to these resorts and stuff. But again, like as what we're getting with these North American resorts as far as resources and help from the resort, Japan, the resorts in Japan that we're talking to don't have the means to be able to do that.
Got it.
And so then that falls through as well.
Yeah.
So we're like, so that's not happening in Japan. And so again, fucking panic. Where are we going to do it? And so like, it's funny.
This is an every year
Every
thing.
fucking year I'm panicking. And
Yeah.
it gets better and more established every year.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, this will be the last year I have a fucking problem with it. So we're like, oh fuck, it's scramble time. Like all these other events are happening. Like, I'd already kind of pitched that it was going to be in Japan. We just didn't know where yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so anyway, so it can't happen there. And then we're like, we call up, I fucking touch base with Mountain Baker, like
Wow.
through LibTech, things like that. That's a whole nother show. That didn't happen. All of these, we're just running out of zones. And so I hit up Ricky at Timberline.
Nice.
And it was like, hey, we crossed paths a couple of times and stuff, but it's like, again, you just got to find the ally that gets what you're doing.
Ricky was
fucking
great,
ruled.
man.
He ran that place when
Yeah.
he was there.
Yeah.
It was really fun and easy to work with.
100%.
He's like, yeah, I'm down. He saw the value and the exposure and all that type of stuff. But the scheduling was weird. So like usually Bowley's in April.
Yeah.
But between the scheduling and whatnot, we pushed it into May. And like at the time, like, oh, May's dope, like,
yeah.
And it's like, we can, then everybody, like all the big mountain, like AK's shut down. We'll get everybody.
Sure.
And then also I'm like, oh, I kept picturing Bowley features up at camp, almost at camp level.
Yes.
With just that iconic fucking backdrop
Of
that you
course.
were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's probably the most photographed backdrop in all of fucking snowboarding.
Absolutely it is.
And one of the most iconic globally. And I was like, but they've never seen those features.
They've never been there.
And so
Yeah.
we put that out there, and hood's another element though. Like it's complete. There's no shade, no nothing. Like completely
right.
exposed.
Yes.
The sun comes up at that time of the day at like 6 o'clock till 7 p.m. It's constantly melting. It's like we worked harder on that build than anything I've ever worked on.
Wow.
Like we built everything like 30, 40 times bigger than because we're trying to know that it would be melting. It melted faster than that. Like we built it 3 fucking times before anybody even dropped in on it. It was like then you get the dust, the volcanic dust that just works in there, and it just takes the sun and just
heats it up.
So again, it was cool. It was a really good time.
Resources too, right? Like they've got
and they brought Arena down to help.
Sick.
And then they had their whole crew, and that's where I met Weasel, who is one of my favorite operators in the world, and he just started his own thing, Wizard Snow Parks.
Right.
Fucking radical dude. But yeah, it was amazing, but it beat the shit out of us.
Yeah.
So it was like, okay, never above tree line. There was a lot of nevers.
Right.
Like we checked it off and we made it work, but it was fucking exhausting. So Japan had kind of missed that link now. So now it was just like US and Canada.
Got it.
The evolution of Bowley. So the next year, again, it's like it's Mammoth's opportunity again. This is 2019. And I think TJ only told me no twice that year, because now they're part of Altera. There's different management and stuff.
I got you. Yeah.
So it's always evolving. We did it again, and that one, man, the spacing, everything. What was cool there is it was the same location that we'd been before.
Yeah.
So that was the first time we had some familiarity with what was going on.
Second build in the
and
same
it was like,
spot.
I remember this sucked.
Yeah.
Let's do this so this doesn't get affected. So the speed was better. All the build work, like it was. I was really fucking proud of how that worked out.
Yeah.
And so that was it. It was, we were told no up into that year, into January again. So it was like, and they'd already had the event. That's what made me, that's what was frustrating on that, was that it was like, yo, we were here 3 years ago and it was fucking radical.
You know how awesome this is going to be.
And you don't want to do it?
Right.
Anyway, so that was the little asterisk on that one. And then then it was supposed to be coming back up into 2020 was back up into sunshine, and that's when the pandemic hit and shut everything down that year. So sunshine missed a year there.
Yeah.
And then the next year it was like we were just trying to like Snowboy. Basically, there was Snowboy events and there was Travis's events that happened in 21.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nobody else knew what to do or like
how to do it with the quarantines and all the things.
Well, my thing is like we got kicked. Everybody did, but like our whole business model like is built like it's the events at the end of the season. If we're going to make any money to keep us going, that's where it is.
Yeah.
And so we were up in Sunshine. I remember we're finishing the build for Rise of the Village, and I started seeing the resorts on Instagram in Europe starting to close down. It's like, whoa, this is a thing. And like talking to my wife and like all those steps, and then flying home right as everything's closing. There's me and one other person on this flight from Calgary to Seattle, and you didn't know what the airport was going to look like. Like everybody's got their own experiences during that.
Seattle
that window
nuts.
was weird,
yeah.
Especially because it had started. Like the first cases known were in Seattle, and so yeah, it was just bizarre. So we didn't do the side hit seance was supposed to be. I was 3 days away from flying out to do that in Vermont. So that didn't happen with Rome. And then it was going to be Holy Bully at Sunshine and It's Tits at Timberline. And all three of those didn't happen. And that was any money we were going to make was going to be off of those because all the other events just cover your operating costs, right?
Yeah.
And so that fucking sucked as it did for everybody. But then later that fall, it was like if we're not able to do events in 21, Snowboy's done.
Yeah.
Like I had to take out a bunch of loans and stuff to absorb that year. And there was a little bit of help we were able to get. But if we had to sit out another year,
that was it.
We're toast. That's the chapter is closed. So that was the hardest year of like, to me, everybody's like, oh, you must just chill in the summer, right? And like, no, the hardest part is all the behind the scenes shit.
Yeah.
But that was times fucking 50 because again, nobody knew what was going to be allowable, acceptable. It's all different between states, between who fucking knows?
Between resorts, yeah.
And it was just so new. But it was like, we have to come up with a way to do this. And then again, it's like, play to your strength. What do we have that's unique? I was like, our events happen outside. We don't have an awards session in the White Salmon Day Lodge at the end where everybody's packed in.
Mm-hmm.
Like we don't, like our stuff is all just happening outside.
We can do this.
And so it clicked with me at a point. I'm like, if a resort is open, and sometimes some resorts would even have caps on how many visitors could be there.
Right.
But I'm like, do you have caps on individual runs? And they're like, what do you mean? I was like, once you get there, or is there anybody that says only X amount of people can be on run A at a time?
Right.
Like, no, we just cap tickets. Like, okay, well, we could do this event then because we're just another run. And technically we're allowing even less people potentially into it because it's a private run. Yeah. So we were just doing private, like we just changed the name of it. Like we weren't doing events. We were just doing private park builds type of thing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, totally.
But so we figured out kind of a loophole.
Nice.
And was able to, like, we did the high project at Mountain High when LA County was the highest COVID cases in the entire fucking world that week. We're driving down there like,
oh my God,
it was bananas. But like, again, we took it mad fucking seriously. Like everybody we got cooked out on YouTube on it because like we were doing the builds with masks on. Everybody riding was with masks on. All that. It's like, and again, it's like, in hindsight, you can say that maybe that wasn't necessary, shit like that. But it was like, this is the agreement that we had that allowed us to do this. You know why the only reason that Snowboy events were the only thing that was fucking going on is because we played by these rules. Yeah. So like the rules, like the compromise with the resorts is we're going to cut the invite list in half. Right. So there's half the amount of people. Everybody's going to do all these steps. Yeah. And we're comfortable with that. Yeah. But also we had I had the responsibility of making sure that Snowboy continued But also, since we're the first people doing events, the whole fucking industry is waiting for us to fuck up. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's like, if we do good, this could show a route out of this potentially, because we don't know how long it's going to last.
Right.
But if we fuck up, nothing's going to happen.
Yeah.
And then we're going to be the fucking, everybody's going to be pissed off at us because we fucked up the whole thing.
Yep.
And so, you know, we were able to pull off every event except for we made it just West Coast.
Yeah.
We made it so we just drove. We had a travel bubble with my crew.
Cool.
I didn't get to see my family for 7 weeks one time just because
wow.
we're just making it so we're taking everything as serious as possible.
Yeah.
But we pulled it off. The only thing we didn't do was get up to Canada because we still couldn't cross over. And yeah, it survived. So on that one, Timberline was cool enough. Ricky wasn't there. He had already moved on to Air Blaster.
Yeah.
But they were cool enough to basically switch rotation years.
Oh, rad.
With Sunshine on that one.
Yeah.
And we did a half side. It's my least favorite of the builds.
I tried to get to it. They wouldn't let us.
Oh, yeah,
the
yeah.
border.
No, a lot of people, D-Watt, everybody, a lot of people got turned around at the
Yeah.
Peace Arch, man.
Oh, big time.
But yeah, so we did what we could on that, and it happened again. But again, that was like, oh, you thought a resort hiccup was tough? We're gonna give you a fucking pandemic hiccup, and you know, and so that was that year, and then you know, last year the doors finally opened for getting into Canada.
Wow. Yeah.
It's funny. We had the last snowboarding event that happened before the pandemic was Rise of the Village. It literally happened, and then all the resorts closed down that week.
Oh, wow.
Because we finished on a Friday, and by like that next Monday, everything was shut. Then in the 25-year tour last year, we started that at Blue Mountain in Ontario.
Oh, sick.
And we did a barely an event the day before, and then we did the Blue Project.
Yeah.
And those were the first events that happened, snowboarding events that happened in Canada after the pandemic.
That's crazy.
So we were the bookends.
Yeah, that's incredible.
It was pretty fucking weird, right?
Yeah, that's fun.
So that was cool. And then, so we were able to come back to finally, it took 5 years to come back to Sunshine.
Damn.
But again,
Totally
that's where the hiccups stopped. You know, whatever, you ate some sugar or held your breath or whatever. But like getting back in working with Sunshine, again, they got it. They saw the value and the appetite that they had waiting for the patience.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful to that. The patience for waiting for this thing to come back for 5 years.
Yeah.
And got back to our zone and worked with Ben and the arena guys and got to see so many people that we hadn't seen for a long fucking time. And yeah, it was fucking special. And
puts it into perspective.
Yeah.
So we rolled up on that. I knew what to expect. It's a Snowboy event. It's holy bully, man.
Right.
And I was still blown away. I find that resort to be just absolutely a wonderful spot to be.
It's awesome, man. And then that's where I enjoy. There's a few things. It's like the whole experience there is great. Obviously, how you're treated means a lot, and respected and valued, and that we get that in spades from every level of the resort.
You feel it, yeah.
Yeah, from the baristas know what you're doing and they think that's cool. They get, again, that bragging and
the
pride.
whole town, yeah.
Yeah, it's cool. But then also like it's straight out of fucking Lord of the Rings. Like
yes.
To me the backdrops, it's like, wow, we build something and I'm really hyped on what we build, and then I look up and I'm like, oh fuck. Look at that. That mountain range just said, whatever, dude. You know, so like it complements itself that way. There's no fucking volcanic dust. That's a good one. And like the snowpack, it's just, again, it's inland enough and north enough and high enough that the snowpack it's my favorite snowpack to work on that I've ever worked in 26 years of building events.
Yeah.
It's a dream of snowpack.
Cool.
You know, like any place you can get, you know, some clouds can come in or this or that.
Yeah.
You deal with that. But like there's so many things between the support, the location, the backdrop, all of those things. It was like, so at that point, again, just trying to make it easy, like quit banging your head against the wall. I approached and talked with Kendra and David and the crew up there, I was like, was there any interest in being the long-term location for fucking Holy Bowly? And they're like, that's a thing? And like, again, to me, it's like rewarding. Like, yeah, you stood by us. We did 2 of these things 5 years apart. We did these village events in there. Like, if anybody gets it in this industry, I feel more support from that resort than any other resort. And that's not a shot on other. It's just like that level is bananas and it's appreciated. So I'm like, you fucking believed in us. I want you to get the rewards of that too.
Yeah, dope.
So yeah, so last year at the end of the last day, we just let everybody know that we'll be seeing you back here the last week of April and in 2023. And so and moving forward. So
that's so sick.
Yeah, and
what a partnership.
And then again, we talked before about the familiarity and some fine tuning. Again, like Bowley was for a few years, it was just growing, such doubling and doubling and doubling. That's not achievable long term. At some point, there's a max amount of space that you can build, maintain, and whatnot. So we've kind of reached that. So now it's the fine tuning. It's like that familiarity with the location, the familiarity with the crew, and all that is what I think is going to allow us to keep Bowley evolving and becoming, who fucking knows? I can't wait to see those next steps of it, you know? So
wow, man.
So that's kind of the Bowley story. Like,
I love it, dude.
We talked about that of just like, I've never been able to just outside of my wife, I don't think anybody has sat through the whole spiel. And I'm sure there's a bunch of shit I'm missing. There's a lot of people that have been major parts of it, and obviously like the biggest fucking thank you to Pete Sari and LibTech and Jesse Burtner and all the folks there who've been the main supporter of this event since its inception. And that's fucking rad on that too, is like when I left Mervyn, they were cool enough to let me, like, I created Holy Bowley while I was working with them.
Right.
So somebody could have said that's our thing.
Of course.
But they also recognized that Bowley was me, that I was the energy of that, and they wanted it to continue.
And they're
as
still
long as they had,
supporting it, right?
So it was like, it was a very amicable thing. And so which I'm very fucking proud of, because they were the brand that I respected most in the world.
Yes.
They launched the Holy Holy Revival, all these things.
Wow.
I worked with them for 4 years. They were the sponsor of the Downtown Throwdown. They allowed so many of my fucking passion projects to be executed and exist. And so it would have been a fucking shame if there was a bitterness
bad
and
blood
whatnot
or
off of that.
Yeah, but there's not, obviously.
And it was fucking fantastic.
Sorry ripped that course last year. I was like, dude, you are rocking it.
Yeah.
He's got to be in his 50s now too, right? Like, those guys are a little bit older than me.
They're in the upper 5s, I think. So
dude, he's ripping. I was like, Pete, sorry, killing it.
Just fucking shred machine.
Yeah,
dude.
So, he's like, I was injured. I'm like, sure.
Just frothers.
Yeah.
And just again, you see traits that or things, similarities and stuff. Like I've enjoyed so much just being able to be able to call them, him and Mike and that whole crew of friends and peers and collaborate with, and just being like, again, it's like, it's cool when I feel like I have a lot of juice and a lot of passion and stuff. But then when you line up with somebody else that matches your shit,
dude.
it can get chaotic as fuck, and it's really hard to, like, it might take 3 days before you actually like start thinking about something. But it's there's some cool magical shit that can come out of that stuff too. So anyway, I just wanted to make sure that I didn't mention those individuals and that support from LibTech, not only for Holy Bowley, but just all the way back. Like, you know, they were backing Shut Up and Snow Skate with GNU. Like they've been an integral fucking part of that, and as a lot of people have. But fucking kudos on that, and hope to keep making everybody proud as being a part of this shit. So
stoked, man. We just did 3 hours. 3 hours
Dude.
and 15 minutes.
Ding.
That's incredible, dude.
Man.
Thank you for sharing your story. Thanks for coming all the way up here. It means like the world to me that you made the show important enough to do this. Like that's fucking awesome.
It's huge. And again, thanks for having the platform to have this out there. Because to me, it's like, again, it's those are the things that not everybody's going to be fucking interested in. But if the person that wants to know, and it's like I've touched on little pieces of it and things like that. But I don't know. I'm fucking hyped that it's out there. That somebody really wants to know where this fucking came from and listen to a couple graybeards fucking yak for 3 fucking hours.
Yeah, dude.
It's out there. So it's been a goddamn pleasure.
Awesome. Thanks, homie.
Yeah, brother. Boom.
FNRad shoutouts this week to Krush and Smiley and their whole family. Thank you for hosting FNRad at your home. Extra special thanks to Grouse Mountain for hosting the interview you just saw. Thanks Marcus and Grant for arranging the use of a beautiful grouse cabin. And thanks to Grouse's Chad Plimmer. Welcome back, by the way. He scooped up my mid-layer yesterday that I forgot at the base of Olympic Chair, so I owe him one, that's for sure. Shout out to listeners Shane Austin, who got me on the tram first thing yesterday. Marty Scala, Justin Pino, Anson Trites, Gentle Brad, Chris Corbett Photo, Jamie Sherritt, and Artie and the gang. Grouse has been all time the last couple of days. Be sure to come back next week for another episode of the FNRad Snowboard Podcast, presented by Vans and brought to you by FNRad Snowboarding.